BYU, Texas Tech in a Big 12 championship game, playing for all the marbles in a conference that we thought would be a lot more, I'm going to say, plagued by parity this year. Two 11-1 teams squaring off. One of those teams, the nation has decided, the committee has decided, hey, this is one of the best teams in the country. Texas Tech has looked like that, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I've gushed about the job that coaching staff did. Joey McGuire deserves a lot of credit. Sheil Wood, their defensive coordinator, probably deserves even more credit. It's actually like low-key insane that his name did not come up for any of the myriad head coaching options and openings that have been out there. And by the way, I don't think we're done with the coaching carousel spinning. Okay, as I say that, a rumor that started yesterday became official just now. James Peterson keeping me on top of things as we talk about the continuing spin of a college football coaching carousel. Matt Campbell, the next head coach at Penn State University. The reports had come out yesterday that they shifted their focus to Matt Campbell. Hey, he's been really good at Iowa State. He's averaged 8 wins at Iowa State. That's not an easy thing to do. I think Matt Campbell's a good coach. 8 wins at Penn State means you're going to last 3 years at Penn State. 8 wins at Iowa State, they'll pay you $5 to $6 million for the rest of your dang life. This is one we should keep an eye on in 2028, 2029. The regret quotient that we discussed earlier in the year, like the Brian Kelly, what did I do here? That kind of a situation. We'll see with Matt Campbell. And obviously a lot more interest on that outcome for Penn State because of the fact that, Kalani Sitake, for a brief, blessed moment in Penn State Nittany Lions time, they thought they were going to get Kalani. And then they had to deal with, on a repeated level, by the way, they had to deal with a bunch of highly thought of coaches, their first choice, their second choice, their third choice, all saying, nope, Penn State, we're not interested. And now, on top of things, I don't know if you saw this or heard this, but it is alleged leaked audio of Pat Kraft, their athletic director, speaking in a rather unfiltered manner about several different topics. How you recruit players to a place like Beaver County, Pennsylvania. How you get people to come to Happy Valley because there's nothing around Happy Valley. He talks about how Ohio State has all these advantages because they do. Nothing wrong with that. He uses some colorful language in the whole thing, but I'm not going to cry about that. He talks about how Oregon's a bunch of weirdos. Half true. He talks about how Michigan is a bunch of cheaters. Well, I mean, you go back a couple of seasons, all true. We know that now. But one of the things that he brings up in this alleged leaked audio is something that I think we've talked about for Utah football. I think we've talked about to some extent for BYU football. We've talked about with Utah State, who's obviously in a completely different tax bracket with this kind of stuff. But in this leaked audio, and by the way, that's bad news when a player might be sitting in there, a member of the leadership council. This is all alleged. We don't know it's actually him, but guess what? It's him. You don't want to be recorded. So someone's trying to play gotcha and then leaking this audio. And I don't think any of this is particularly damning. I don't think, he'll probably have to issue some kind of disingenuous apology because he does say some bad things about Oregon being weirdos and Michigan being cheaters and Ohio State being, bullies or of some kind. But he also mentions that he thinks that NIL could be done differently at Penn State relative to what James Franklin was doing, because James Franklin apparently was paying everyone on the roster. Now, again, we don't get an official release or any kind of special privileged information on salaries. I don't think everybody, especially on like a Utah football roster, I doubt that every single person on that roster has an agent. I'm sure there's a lot of guys who are, big time recruits who have agents. We talked with Ben Moa yesterday, and he said they went out and they got Celesi, his youngest son. They got him an NFL agent and an NFL money manager. It's the right thing to do when your kid is the top-rated recruit in the state and one of the top-rated recruits in the country, especially by position or positionless in his case, because he fell into that athlete category where you could end up being a defensive back, a wide receiver, a running back, put on the right amount of weight. You could be a linebacker, that kind of a thing. So those guys need agents, probably down to what? The 30th, 40th most prominent guy on the team, you probably need an agent. You get beyond that, and you're just paying somebody a percentage of nothing for the most part, unless you're at Penn State. They were paying 100 guys, according to the athletic director. You don't have to pay 100 guys. I talked about this when NIL became a reality. I talked about this before we even had a glimmer in the eye of all the NIL parents out there. I've made a point as a former walk-on, I can promise you this. There are 50 hangers-on freeloaders on every college football roster that aren't even worth the tuition they're paid in their scholarship. They're not even worth the meal stipend. They're not worth to the football team the cost of the helmets that you have to give them, because you got 4 damn helmets for all these guys now. I guess not at Penn State. So 877-353-0700. How many guys do you want to pay on your team? How many guys do you need to pay on your team? Think of a really good Utah football team, like the one you just watched finish a regular season. I put you in charge. You're the GM. How many guys are you paying? It's not 100. You're not doing I'm giving everyone a full scholarship and everyone gets some selection, some portion of revenue sharing. We're going to get to revenue sharing here in just a second. It's not like the NFL. It's not like the NBA, where there's a rookie minimum, there's a league minimum. There's no collectively bargained floor for salaries. Well, I guess there kind of is. That collectively bargained floor is cost of living, tuition, fees, books, meal plan, housing, which is valuable. And I've always taken exception to the idea that we pretended it wasn't, because elite players weren't getting paid, and so they were undercompensated. But non-elite players are overcompensated in some ways at the college football and college basketball level, and certainly at the non-revenue producing sports level. So 877-353-0700. Tell me how many guys you would be paying or trying to pay as the general manager of Utah football. Basketball is a different conversation. We can get into more with basketball. Show today and every day is brought to you by our friends at Big Willie's. 1717 South Main. I've told you how good the food menu is. I've told you about their special partnerships with Outlaw Distillery. They get spirits and exclusives that no other bar in Utah gets, if you're into that kind of thing. They have a rare bourbons collection if you want to sample and try. If you're just more of a meat and potatoes type of individual, you can get literal meat and potatoes on the food menu, and then, just grab a cold beer, sit down, watch whatever game you're looking for. If you don't have tickets, if you don't have the right television package, Big Willie's does. 1717 South Main. Tell them OC sent you. They'll take good care of you. So as we try to figure out NIL, by the way, I have to say this. I had been hearing things that I didn't even want to come on the air to share, because I didn't want to panic people. I didn't want people to think I was doom and glooming with Utah football's situation because I'm not. But, when you talk to certain people up around the program, they don't express doom and gloom, but they do express some level of concern with the keeping up with the Joneses aspect of trying to compete with Texas Tech, trying to compete with the money that's flowing into BYU, trying to compete with what Colorado has committed to Deion Sanders, trying to compete with the rising tide in Tempe, Arizona at Arizona State. And I think that was, at least for now, misplaced concern, or I'm not going to say unfounded concern, but misplaced concern or overblown concern because, again, leaning on what Ben Moa told us yesterday, at least for special players, at least for the number one recruit in their home state, Utah's making sure they stay competitive. Now, I don't know if that ever comes home to roost. I don't know if we ever get to a situation where you got to pay the piper and it's like, hey, man, I'm not giving you this money anymore. I don't think that happens as long as you're turning out 9, 10, 11-win seasons. I think you're going to maintain support and you're going to gain more support. And I think that you don't have to look very far for several examples of that. I mean, Netflix did a great documentary on how much things change when you have good players, good teams, national relevance be talked about with their Johnny Manziel documentary. That was pre-NIL. But all the money that started pouring into the university because of that happens with success. Utah, had this been the bad year that some people feared it was going to be, that would have been maybe more of a real concern. But then you hear that the leadership in college football is meeting again, and they did this week, and I actually wanted to get to this on the show yesterday, but it looks like the revenue sharing model, the salary cap, so to speak, is going to increase another $2.5 million for next year. For Ohio State and Oregon, that's not a big deal. For Alabama and LSU, that's not a big deal. They've got a lot more money coming in because of their television contracts. They've got this long-standing tradition of being the biggest show in town and of continual support for championship-level football. That's not as big of a deal for those teams. If you're Utah State, you're looking at that and going like, guys, we couldn't even keep up with the 20.5. Now you're going to make it 23? We can't do that. If you're Houston football, and by the way, Houston football is in Kansas football, that's for the entire athletic department, ladies and gentlemen, that the revenue share is this year $20.5 million, with the bulk of that going to the revenue-producing sports, and we learned that the bulk of that is going to the big-time players. It's being structured very similarly to how the NFL pays players and how the NBA pays players. At Utah, again, this is just the school sharing its money. This is not boosters, because boosters stepped up in a big way to help out Alex Jensen and what we hope will be a resurgent Utah basketball roster. But just on the university level, Mark Harlan and that department up there had to decide and still have to decide, A, can we make sure we keep up with the 20.5? Yes, that's a no-brainer. We have to commit to that if we want to stay competitive. All right, now how are we going to divide this up? Football, basketball, women's basketball, gymnastics. If you're at Houston and Kansas, you're looking at it and you're going, boosters, will you foot the basketball bill so we can pour all of this 20.5 into football? Our basketball teams are really, really good. Can you do that for us? Now you're at Arizona, right? Arizona's got a top 5 basketball team and a top 20 football team. And both of those coaches are going to come to their athletic director's office with a handshake and then a hand out. Hey, you want more of this? I need money to bring in these players or to maintain the ones we got, to keep them out of the transfer portal. So the College Sports Commission, the powers that be, the leaders in college football, have increased the salary cap a little more than 10% for next year. All right, fine. Next year, $23 million. Spoiler alert, Utah is going to say, yeah, we're doing that. We're maxing that out. If we continue for the next 5 years, increasing it 10% every year, is there ever a time where Utah, where BYU, where Arizona State, where Colorado, who's paying all their damn money to Deion Sanders right now, has to look around and say, oof, I don't know if we can do this? Because it's supposed to be revenue share. I don't know how realistic it is that you're getting your overall athletic department revenue share to increase by 10% every year, year over year. And if you do, it's because you have a really dang good football team. That's the only way to make it happen. If you as an athletic department are expected to keep up with this, and I don't know if it's going to be this way every single year, but if you're expected to keep up with a 10% increase every year, you literally cannot afford to have a losing football team, to have a struggling football team, to have empty seats in the stadium and disinterested sponsors and disinterested fans. You literally cannot afford it. Not in the philosophical sense of like, hey, man, you can't let that happen. We can't afford that. No, financially, you won't be able to afford it. Now, Utah's in a very, I will say, not lucky position because it's not luck. It's Kyle Whittingham and his staff's hard work. But you're in a privileged position that you have the right people in place because, golly, Kansas State right now, Kansas State is wondering if this is a perpetually respectable program in the conference, right? And Kansas State is looking around and going like 6-6, and our coach just retired. And we're hiring Texas A&M's offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, our old quarterback, and we hope that he's going to be able to fix this for us. But I don't know, can they? At UCF, if you're looking around and you're just like, how many more 4-win seasons can we have and still say, yeah, guys, we're going to pay the $23 million salary cap to our athletes? You know who's making these decisions? SEC, Big Ten, Notre Dame. Do you think they're doing it with the best interest of ACC mid-level teams, of Big 12 mid-level teams, of Big 12 top-level teams? Of everyone else, you think they're doing that with those groups in mind? Heck no. They're doing it to serve themselves, and they're doing it probably deliberately to try and put the squeeze on everybody else. Hey, man, these athletes deserve it. These athletes deserve what they've worked for decades. We sat high on the hog, and we watched these kids work for free, and we made our billions. Now it's time to share. Yeah. Thank you, Boss Hog in the SEC. We know you're doing this out of the goodness of your heart. Or are you doing it so that Clemson and North Carolina and Miami are looking around at all the people in their league who can't compete and just going like, we got to get off of this boat. These guys, this is pathetic. We're never going to be able to get the benefit of the doubt if our schedule is full of these 5-win teams.
And like inadvertently, they're doing it so schools like unintentionally they're doing it so schools like BYU, who have shown that they can come to the table with lots of NIL money and presumably a growing revenue. They're helping schools like BYU out in the Big 12, but they're not. That wasn't intentional for them too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people, when they talked about the upward mobility schools, they were talking about Vanderbilt. They were talking about, well, look, man, like if we continue to grow our revenues for these SEC television contracts and these Big Ten television contracts, and yes, the Big 12's contract is bigger than it was before, but comparatively, it's not in the same ballpark as those two. The powers that be, the influential players, were looking at this thing and saying, yeah, like, who knows? Maybe Indiana can make something of themselves. Maybe Vanderbilt can make something of themselves. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, both of those schools were punchlines when we were talking about their respective conferences. And this revenue sharing model, they're just like, well, I mean, if that evens the playing field a little bit for those schools, they weren't thinking about BYU. And if they were, they maybe, unless you have a Mormon in the room, they probably didn't realize to the full extent, like, the financial weight behind BYU from its alumni base. I saw a question floating around on Twitter from my guy Jimmy Rex, he's like an influencer. He's in like the business world, whatever. He's got a big following here in Utah. Sometimes people make fun of him for participating in certain things. I know Jimmy well. He's a nice guy. Say what you will, but like people respond to what he does, right? And he put out a question. I don't know how in good faith this was, but he put out a question like, why does BYU have so much more money than Utah from a booster standpoint? He's a BYU fan, so he was loving the replies of just like, well, because BYU students are smarter, BYU people are more successful. But, I mean, if you're going to the University of Utah, if you're a genius level student going to the University of Utah, what are you going for the most part? Medicine. Now, there's a lot of money in medicine, but there's not as much money in medicine as there is in entrepreneurial tech. So I think that's part of the answer. I also think that the Utah old money situation versus the BYU new money situation matters a lot. I think it's harder to get people whose names have been on the side of buildings up there for decades to get on board with, well, now we got to pay players directly. Whereas the crumble cookie guy down at BYU is just like, yeah, okay, that's what it is. I just made my money 10 minutes ago.
The crumble bat signal's out. All right, let's do this. And to your point about the industries that BYU's donors are involved in versus Utah's, it very much is a new money versus old money situation. You think about like the guys on the side of the building. You got bankers. You got other. Where did the Huntsmans initially get their money? I actually don't even. I'm not sure what the Huntsmans. I know Eccles was in the bankers, right?
Well, the Huntsmans, I believe it was in like chemicals.
Chemicals, okay. So you have like that's very much older industry type stuff, and they're still those families are still doing very well for themselves and still being very generous in their donations. But it does help that BYU has a lot more in the tech world.
And by the way, nothing wrong with either of those things.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely not.
Like it's just. Like Stanford has, well, why isn't this working out the way that Stanford? Well, culturally, the Stanford alumni base, and we've talked about this plenty on the show. The Stanford alumni base, the Silicon Valley kids, that could be like, think of a lot of the Silicon Valley like darlings. Okay, well, Zuckerberg's from Harvard, so doesn't apply. He's not going to help out Stanford. Like. The Google guys, one of them's Russian. You think he's going to give to college football teams? You got a bunch of dudes from like Hong Kong, from India. You've got a bunch of guys that didn't exactly come up in the sports world that are now captains of industry down there. It doesn't make a whole ton of sense for them to be like, yes, I am going to now deployed my efforts financially towards bolstering a culture that probably never accepted me when I was a glasses-wearing 110-pound whatever. At BYU, this perfect confluence of factors exists to where you have a hardworking, dedicated, clean living, and that does matter, I think in this case, fan base that is passionate about BYU athletics and feels connected to BYU athletics, whether they played that sport or not, because it's a religious institution and it is a fun, cool missionary arm of the church that they care about in most cases. That dynamic doesn't automatically exist for Colorado, for UNLV, for Utah, for Arizona and Arizona State. You have to, if you love Utah, if you love the University of Utah, it's because you went to the University of Utah. That's it. There's no other option. Or, I guess, you lived close enough to the University of Utah that your parents took you to games, or your grandparents took you to games, or somebody took you to games, and whether you attended the university or not, you came up with nostalgic, positive memories around that game. It's why I loved Notre Dame for so much of my life, because I was connected to it through my family, through my experiences watching Notre Dame football on television, right? Like, a lot of people love Notre Dame because of those same things. That doesn't happen for Utah. That doesn't happen for Kansas State. That doesn't happen for Arizona State. That does happen for BYU, even if you don't attend BYU, because you have a connection to it via your religion. And so there's this apples to oranges comparison when you start to do the math on, can we keep up in this same way? And Utah has done an incredible job of being where they are and maximizing their success and making the transition from the non-NIL, the non-transfer portal, the non-pay-for-play and revenue share era into this new world where a lot of state schools that are not firmly, deeply, long-time established as blue bloods are going to have a hard time and are already starting to falter and have a hard time. And I'm talking even very respectable programs, and even one of those very respectable programs that at one time had more money than any of us could imagine. Oklahoma State, at one time when T. Boone Pickens was alive and donating, he was like, you need a $180 million addition to the stadium? I will write that check. No problem. Done.
Gundy's getting a raise. Okay.
But Oklahoma State now, you're just like, what happened to you guys? Well, part of what happened to you is your in-state rival Oklahoma left for greener pastures where they were getting double your your television contract money, and that success begets more success. This 10-win season that Utah just finished in the regular season at least, and the bowl game that you go to, we'll see how it plays out. I don't know how super enthusiastic people are going to be about this bowl game, but I said it before the season started how critically important this year was. Now that I'm looking at these changes that continue to be made and the escalation of the criteria to compete financially, if this had been another, like a 6-win year for Utah, James, we would have to have like pre-show meetings about how doom and gloom I was allowed to be. I'm so grateful that I don't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, a great parallel to if that had turned out in that way for University of Utah this year is what's going on at Kansas State, like you had mentioned before. Like the head, and even down to very well respected head coach leaving.
Yeah,
that's something that we are anticipating potentially happening at Utah, even though it's a different situation because they got a great succession plan in place, unlike Kansas State had to scramble to get their guy.
By the way, if Kyle Whittingham cried after a loss and then retired 2 games later, we'd be like, what happened there?
Yeah, what happened?
That's what happened with Chris Kleiman.
That is what happened. And then, I mean, another school that's going to be in some hot water right now with this is Iowa State. You just lost your really respected head coach, and I'm not sure they had any kind of succession plan ready, or they have one ready now. It's probably going to take a little bit before they get their next guy. And Matt Campbell, like you said at the top, very respected, very successful coach, especially by Iowa State standards. He was linked to NFL, USC multiple times before this, and now he's finally getting the big job he was linked to. It doesn't matter that he's like the 20th guy on Penn State's list. That's bad for Iowa State.
It's tough. So keep a close eye, because $2.5 million more next year. Let's say another $2 million the year after that, maybe $3 million more the year after that. At some point, now we're approaching revenue share being a $30 million bill that has to be paid by all these schools every single season in revenue sharing, or they have to kind of surrender and say, we can't quite all the way compete with the big boys. the arms race is moving faster. We'll take a quick one here. We'll get back to talking more actual X's and O's, real football. Bill Riley, the voice of the Utes, joins us. We'll check in on basketball with him as well. It's a Friday edition of the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. When you hear that music, you know who's walking out of the tunnel and into the WWE cage match. It's Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, coming to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792.1 FM. Bill, welcome. How are you, sir?
I was hoping you'd do that in like a Jim Ross kind of a voice right there. My God!
It would have been
that
better.
Bill Riley's music?
It would have been better if I had. Man,
don't hit me with a chair.
I won't. No, we're not going to hit Bill with any chairs. We need Bill to have, a clear voice for at least one more Utah football game this year. What are you hearing? Most likely bowl destination. You get any more information than the rest of us?
No, I mean, it seems like I talked to Kyle Bonagura this week. He was on my podcast, and he does those bowl projections every week. It kind of feels like Vegas. That makes a lot of sense because they're still stuck in the old Pac-12 model for one more year. So Utah's technically going to a bowl game, not as a Big 12 team, but as a Pac-12 team. So I think Vegas feels like the most likely. I know there's a few others that are in play. Alamo, a little bit of a long shot. That would be more probably in play. And again, this is just me reading the tea leaves. If BYU won tomorrow and we're in the playoff, I think Holiday might also be in the mix too. But I'm hearing more Vegas, I think, than just about anything else.
Now, I understand why people feel this way. I've been kind of swinging back and forth. There are folks who've expressed, oh, man, 10-2, and it's the Vegas Bowl again, because – most of us thought that 10-2 or better would be a trip to the conference championship game this year. It didn't work out that way. But, after being bothered by the first half performance against Kansas and then seeing the win ultimately and realizing that was 5 in a row, the last two in, less than perfect scenarios, certainly, I was like, man, after a 5-7 year to then bounce back immediately and go 10-2, I'm just going to try to be more optimistic and appreciate what this means for the state of the program. Is the Vegas Bowl counterproductive to that, or should we be able to get on board with the idea that, like, hey, this is what it is. It's still a great year.
Well, I mean, it's still a great year. I mean, I said before the year, Sean, I thought they'd go 10-2 and 7-2 in the conference, but I thought 10-2 and 7-2 would get them to Dallas. I didn't know how good Texas Tech would be. They were that preseason. If it all comes together, they're going to be really good. Well, it all came together. They were really good. I didn't think BYU would be as good as they are. They played pretty mistake-free football most of the year, and they're where they are. But 10-2 is. I mean, look at all the teams that are 10-2 right now. I pull up the polls. There's got to be in the rankings right now. There's got to be 7 or 8 teams in the power conferences that are sitting here at 10-2. And so, then it becomes a resume game. I'm just looking at the college football. Okay, Oklahoma's 10-2. Alabama's 10-2. Notre Dame's 10-2. Miami's 10-2. Vandy's 10-2. Utah's 10-2. Virginia's 10-2. Tulane is 10-2. I mean, these are all really good teams. And, you're not playing in your conference championship because the two teams ahead of you in your league were 11-1. So now it comes down to resume, and I've said this all week long and last week too. Utah looked really good over the last 5 games. I know they stumbled a little bit and played around a little bit with K-State but they were still wins against solid teams. Not great teams, but solid teams. But the problem is now you're in the resume comparison game. And the fact of the matter is, right now, Utah doesn't have a win against a ranked team. Their resume does not contain a win against a ranked team.
Against the currently ranked team, you're right, yeah.
A currently ranked team. That's not their fault. It's the schedule that's laid out. But the Big 12, it wasn't as good as we thought it would be this year. Arizona State, they lost their quarterback, their star receiver most of the year. They weren't quite as good. That win was a good win for Utah at the time, but as the season played out, not as much. Cincinnati was a juggernaut, allegedly, when Utah played them. Well, they fell off the map after that game. So those were 2 wins against ranked teams at the time, but they aren't ranked teams now. So we're at that time of year where if you're not playing in your conference championship game, it's a resume game. And some people are still playing the resume game. And to be fair, Utah's 2 losses are not bad losses. These are 2 teams that are 1-loss teams, really good losses. The problem is they don't have any good wins by playoff and postseason metric standard. The team that's in front of them, Vanderbilt, they've got 2 losses. But they've also got some quality. They went into Tennessee and just lambasted Tennessee last weekend. I'm not a big Sark fan, but the fact of the matter is Texas has 3 losses, but they've got 4, I think, top 10 wins. Notre Dame, a couple of losses, but they've got some good wins. So we're in that terrible time of the year where if you're not controlling your own destiny, you have to compare resumes. And I don't know. Utah may be better if they played Vanderbilt. but we don't know because they're not going to play, though Vandy was trying to add a game. Maybe Kyle Whittingham and Clark Lee should get together and play a game on like Tuesday or something and try and make a last-ditch plea to get in that thing. But that's sadly where we are with the 12. I mean, it's better than the 14 playoff, but the 12-team playoff has still got a lot of people asking and wanting. And Utah's had back to your original point. Sorry, I'm droning on here. Your original point was it's a great season. Double-digit win season in a power conference. Never apologize about that. You bounce back from an awful season a year ago by your program standards. Everything's good. Problem is, a lot of other people were good too this year, and so you're right on that cusp, but it's probably going to leave them on the outside. Here's what I will say, though. If you do go to the Vegas Bowl, you're going to be playing a ranked team. It might be Iowa. Iowa's a good team. They're 23rd in the college football playoff rankings right now. They played some good games this year. We're really close against teams that are playoff teams. I know it isn't as sexy as being in the playoff or in your conference championship game, but the Vegas Bowl is not the Vegas Bowl of 10 years ago. It's at Reliant Stadium, and if you're playing an Iowa team, maybe an Illinois team, you're going to be playing a pretty good football team. So that's where we're at.
If it's Iowa, two longest tenured coaches in college football squaring off against each other. That's an interesting storyline.
Might also be the fastest bowl game played because both teams love to run the football.
Bill Riley's our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking a little Utah football. We saw the all conference teams release yesterday, the superlative awards also. Devin, Offensive Newcomer of the Year, Spencer, Offensive Lineman of the Year. BYU got a lot of accolades there, and I think you can't really make a real argument against that being, justified. When you look at the Utes who were decorated as all conference, did anyone get snubbed in your mind?
No, I don't really think so. I think Utah, the two offensive linemen are slam dunks. John Henry Daly he might have been an All-American had he finished the season healthy. I mean, he and David Bailey, the Big 12 probably had the best two defensive ends in college football by numbers this year. Bailey and Daly were fantastic.
I mean, he still should be an All-American because he didn't miss a ton, and by the numbers, he should be.
He missed a game and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, he should still be an All-American in my opinion, but we'll see how that works out.
I didn't think anybody got terribly snubbed. Did you?
No, I think I would have liked to have seen, like, on second or third team, another of the offensive linemen. When you've got the second best rushing attack in the country, the tackles are obviously, going to get a lot of the shine. But those interior guys were really, really good too. And I think you could make a case for Jackson Benny, but I will fully acknowledge that part of my affection there is because, the former walk-on story to being a two-way, unbelievable player. I mean, he blocked a field goal or extra point. He blocked a punt. He had interceptions. He had receptions, and like 61 tackles. I think he did enough to have been an all-conference guy. But there's plenty of time for that.
Yeah, I thought Blake Cotton had a really good year for Utah.
Also true.
Too. But to your point, Benny stuffed the stat sheet. I think next year, now that he's played a full year at that position, I think he'll be, if I get a ballot next year, he'll be on my preseason all-conference defense because he's a freakish athlete. He's really smart. He plays multiple positions. That might have hurt him a little bit too, Sean, although I think they just do defensive back. They don't do it by specific position. But I think that kid has got major, major upside and had a fantastic year.
I think you and I have agreed in the past that, when it comes to this recruiting stuff, it's fun to follow, but it's always wait and see. Still, the top two recruits in program history have come in with this class. Celeste Moa with the late flip from Tennessee and Kelvin Obot, coached by Jordan Gross, coming down as the number one player in Idaho, and he's going to do it here in Salt Lake City. Again, it's always wait and see when it comes to recruits, but those two especially feel like significant, especially at this moment in Utah football's kind of path in the college football world.
Well, yeah, because money is part of this deal. And don't think that those guys as top 50 recruits weren't being wooed by financial situations in other places too. So for Utah to have the means to keep those guys in Olbot's place and flip, Moa back. I always kind of got the thought that Moa really wanted to come to Utah in the first place, and he was kind of torn. I think maybe he saw that offense this year and saw maybe the ability to be part and be number one. I think both those guys step in day one next year and are starters and impactful guys next year. I think landing that running back out of Oregon, too, is a huge deal. This is a guy that was the number 2 recruit, I think, in the state of Oregon, the running back. He turned down, I think, Oregon, Washington, some other Northwest schools. I think that's a big get for him. Flipping the defensive lineman down in Orem a couple of weeks ago and getting him here is big, too. But at the end of the day, those are all great, Sean. But at the end of the day, it's what are you doing on retention and what are you going to get in the portal? Because those are the guys that are going to probably have the most direct impact immediately on what you do.
There are reports out there that there's some new thing or something in Kyle Whittingham's contract that he's got to have an answer by today about what his future plans are. I don't know how enforceable that is. Like, if he just says, no, I'm going to wait, I don't know what you do as a school or as an athletic director. I have no idea where he's going. I've been so convinced really all year. And then I see what we just talked about. I see, the lifeblood of a program potentially coming in as freshmen, probably just in a couple of weeks as early enrollees. And he's a super vibrant, healthy guy for his age, and he loves coaching football. And I'm like, man, yeah, the only real reason to walk away if you're Kyle Whittingham is because you've been talking about it for 4 years or 5 years. Beyond that, there's not a really concrete reason why you would. So does today bring an announcement or information of any kind? And what do you think it'll be?
I know I've seen the same stuff about he's got to inform or whatever, but he's Kyle Whittingham. If he decides he wants to have the weekend still, I don't know what he would be going through here, but whatever it might happen to be, you had recruiting this week and everything else. I don't think, again, I'm not the one that enforces contracts. I haven't seen the contract, but I would think that if he said he wanted to have a couple of more days to work some things through or whatever that might happen to be, I think 21 years and Hall of Fame status probably gets you that. But to your point, he's a young 66, that's for sure. I'm around him all the time. And the sense I got this year being around him, especially at the coaches' shows and pre-games and everything like that, is he still loves coaching, Sean. Now, I don't know. He doesn't share company secrets with me as far as what his future is going to be. So I don't have any insider information. But he sure didn't act this year like a coach that was tired of coaching and didn't love the team he was around and things like that. We've all been around people in different professions and places where you're like, oh, yeah, that guy, that gal, they're done. It's just a matter of time. I didn't get that sense at all with Kyle. And this group, Sean, whether it's Devin and Bird and Wayshaw, there's Jackson Benny, who you mentioned earlier. This was still a relatively young team this year. Logan Fano, John Henry Day. The core, the majority of this team is back next year. Again, in theory, I know they're all free agents, but yeah. In theory, this group is back. Scooby Davis, Jackson Benny, technically Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden. You've got a lot of guys, and there were some guys, Trey Reynolds. You got to replace that linebacker group, but it's a really, really, in theory, if you can keep, let's just say you can keep 80%, 85% of this team together, it's going to be a really good team again next year. And so I don't know. I have no inside information, but I would not be surprised. There were a lot of people that are like, he's done. I'm not sure. I have gotten zero sense being around him that he's ready to quit coaching. Maybe he surprises us all and says, it's been fun. It's been real. I'm going to coach the bowl game, and here we go. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's back for another year because I just think he loves the group he has, and I think he loves coaching football.
If he's back for another year, does that change anything for Morgan Scalley, or is he still head coach and waiting a little longer?
I don't think it does, but again, I don't know where Morgan's at, if he's that gung-ho that he's got to be a head coaching I haven't heard his name mentioned anywhere. He's coach in waiting. He's compensated very well as a coordinator, and it's written in the deal that he's a coach in waiting. So I'm sure he would like to be the coach, but I can't imagine it does, but I wouldn't want to speak for him.
Who's going to win the Big 12 championship game?
I think it's Texas Tech. If you watch the first game, that really wasn't a game. It was less of a game than the Utah-Texas Tech game was, to be very fair. Texas Tech kicked 5 field goals that were, I think, all in the red zone. Now, credit to BYU's defense. It kept them out of the end zone, but they moved the ball. They dominated that game. Do I think it'll be exactly the same? No. I think, good teams make adjustments, and BYU's a good team. But I do think Texas Tech is just better. And their offense is good. Their defense is elite, especially in that front 6 or so with Rodriguez at linebacker and those guys up front. And what BYU really wants to do is run the football. And that's been their bread and butter this year. L.J. Martin had a great year, Bear Bachmeier, but nobody's really run on Texas Tech. And so I don't think BYU can beat Tech dropping Bear Bachmeier back 35 times a game to pass. So I think BYU's defense will do a good job. I don't think it'll be a super high-scoring game, but I like Tech in that game. What about you?
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. I'm sentimental about some of the guys on the staff down there, and watching the video that BYU put out when Kalani walked back into the practice facility and said, "Guys, I'm not going anywhere," and seeing how the team reacted to that. That's something, but I don't know if it's enough to get you over Texas Tech, because that is.
Yeah, you played, Sean. You played, whether you were fighting or playing. That's all great, but when you step on the field, it's a different. I mean, all that emotion might carry you for a series or two, but you're not thinking about Kalani staying in the middle of the second quarter when you're down 13-3.
Like I said, I don't know that it's enough to get you through Texas Tech. It's a wonderful story, and it's a great it's a great thing for the future of that program. And it's just, you're up against one of the best defenses in the entire country still. So I would not be surprised if it's a much closer game this time, but I think Texas Tech probably wins. And that's bad for the Big 12 conference. Most Utah fans are definitely okay with BYU losing and being in, just another random bowl game. But from a conference perspective, it's not ideal. So I guess if we were real team players, we'd be rooting for BYU to win. But that's hard for people in Crimson to do.
Yeah, but that's a rivalry thing. I don't think Ohio State fans would ever be like, "Oh, it's good for the conference. I want Michigan to win a national championship." That's not how rivalries are wired. If it was another Big 12 school, maybe you'd say it. But when it's your arch rival, that's just – if the shoe was on the other foot, nobody in blue would be rooting for Utah to win that game against Texas Tech. That's just how rivalries are wired.
What other conference championship game is most interesting to you this weekend?
Well, a couple. I mean, I like all of them, but the ACC. What a terrible league that is.
No, I desperately want Duke to win that.
Ohio State, Indiana is really interesting to me because Indiana, I think, is really good, and they've actually played a couple of teams this year. Ohio State, outside of the Texas game really early, and that was a first game, they didn't really play anybody until they played Michigan. I don't know. I think Indiana's really good. Cignetti's an interesting cat, that's for sure. What Cignetti, he kind of reminds me of Urban when Urban got to Utah. When Urban was like, "Hey, we're badass. I don't care what you guys think." I mean, Cignetti's just had that chip on his shoulder since he got to Indiana, and everybody's bought in. It's kind of the same thing Urban did. Anyway, that game's interesting to me because if Ohio State wins it, they may run the table and go out. Bama, Georgia's really interesting to me, too. I think that's wildly interesting because Bama's had kind of Georgia's number, and Georgia's played better as of late, but I don't know that. Do I believe in Gunnar Stockton? I don't know that Georgia's got kind of the same elite level of talent they did a few years ago. So I don't know. I think they're all kind of interesting to me. I don't like the fact that we're going to have a group of 5 team in the playoff. I love having a group of 5 team in the playoff. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think North Texas or James Madison. I think a group of 5 team in given years when they meet certain benchmarks should be there. But North Texas and James Madison are 24 and 25 in the college football playoff poll, playing in the American and the Sun Belt. I want a group of 5 team in when they had a year like Utah did in 04 or TCU did in, what was it, 09 or Boise State did. I just don't think any of these group of 5 teams this year are worthy of being in a 12-team playoff. Does that make sense?
It does. We talked about that on the show yesterday. I think I would be in support of, and a lot of people who responded would be in support of, having an automatic bid for a group of 5 champ as long as they were undefeated or maybe at least undefeated against group of 5 talent. Like if you
let's just say you're top 15 or top 13.
Sure.
In the college football play. I mean, that's why you have these rankings. That's why everybody else is held to that ranking standard, Sean, except the group of 5 schools. Does that make sense? Everybody else is being held to that standard. The ACC could get left out, but the group of 5 is getting a team in, so it's kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. Going to be fascinating, and for some of these teams, like in that Big Ten championship game, even if you lose, you're off to the playoff, which is wild because if you're in the Big 12, BYU doesn't get to go into the game thinking that, hey, we can lose this game tight, and we're probably still in.
But in some ways, that's freeing. BYU, they can't scoreboard. They can't do anything. I know it kind of stinks because you had a great year and your 2 losses are going to be to a playoff team if you lose. But there is something to win or go home. This is almost a play-in playoff game for BYU in some ways. So in some ways, that's kind of liberating, knowing if we want to keep playing in the playoff, we've got to win here today. Nobody else is deciding our fate. We're deciding our fate.
Bill, give Handy and Handy a shout out before I cut you loose.
Preston and Garrett, awesome guys, fantastic attorneys, personal injury lawyers. I hope you guys don't ever have to call them. Maybe you run into them somewhere, say hey to them, because I don't want you to have been in an accident or one of your loved ones have been hurt. But if that has been the case and you need somebody good to defend you and be on your side and get you through insurance companies and people that you're working against, the guys at Handy and Handy will do it. They have 45 years or more of experience in the legal business. So let them help you out, and they'll do a good job, and they're great guys too. It's Handy and Handy. You can find them online at handylawutah.com.
That's Bill Riley, voice of the Utes, brought to you by Handy and Handy. Always great catching up, Bill. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sean. Talk to you soon.
Bill Riley. All right, we'll double up. We'll come back. We'll do a little Between the Pipes with Adrian Denny. The Utah Mammoth, they've got the Vancouver Canucks at Rogers Arena tonight. They're coming off the biggest win in franchise history. Not the most significant win in franchise history, but the biggest, the largest margin of victory, the shutout. What does that mean? We'll discuss in 3 minutes. Well, it'll be more like 5. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Let's go between the pipes. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Adrian Denny joins us here in studio. Our Mammoth Insider brought to you by Aladdin Industries and Valley Plumbing. Look for the truck with the duck. Adrian, how are you?
Happy Friday, Sean. How's it going, man?
Doing all right. Love a good Friday show. Valley Plumbing, the truck with the duck. The Anaheim Ducks got run over by a Mammoth truck, baby. 7-0 is in a lot of ways, it's at least numerically, it's the biggest win in franchise history. How did this happen?
They got the first goal.
All right.
Okay. First 6 minutes of the game, Lawson Krause, who has 3 goals in the last 3 games and has really kind of been Utah's, emotional leader throughout all of this the last week with everything they've been through with Clayton Keller's father passing away and some guys being sick. And, he's kind of been that rock for him. And he got the scoring started. And then, they take a penalty. And you score a goal and you immediately take a penalty. And it's not a great way to take advantage of a good start. But they killed the penalty. And then they scored another goal quickly, right off the bat, made it 2-0. Took that lead to the second period, got the first goal of the second period. And then Anaheim looked like they'd scored. Utah challenged for an offside. Then Utah got another goal. They didn't let the stoppage affect anything in terms of the way the game was going. So they're up 4-0, went into the third period, just kept scoring goals. So they scored goals, and they just didn't give Anaheim any room to get back into it. They dictated the situation. They said, okay, we're running things around here tonight. It's our show, and they did it for the entire game and shut down the Ducks. But Anaheim wasn't especially good. They had 2 minor league goaltenders in there because both of their goalies are hurt. But Utah didn't give them any room, any string to hang around. And when you give a team an opportunity to hang around, they'll hang around. But if you take it to them on an off night for them, you can win a game like that. So that's going to be big tonight in Vancouver, a team that's won 3 regulation games in their last 21 contests. So tonight in Vancouver, take it to them again. Say, this is our show. It's our game. We're running things around here now. You follow us.
So on paper, the Ducks are much more difficult matchup. They're in top of the division right now. On the other end of that spectrum is a Vancouver team that, to the point you just made, looks ripe for the pickings, even when you're on the road. I don't know how you approach that from a coaching standpoint, from a player, emotion, leadership standpoint, but to get the same level of production, to get that consistency, regardless of the opponent, how do you do it when, human nature would dictate that you're just like, Vancouver, this will be easy tonight.
A good team goes out and does what they did in Anaheim. A serious team goes out and does what they did against Anaheim. And so it's going to be a big thing we're going to watch tonight. How's Utah going to come out and react? Because they can do what they did in Anaheim, or they can score in the first 6 minutes again. And then they can, let the Canucks hang around and take a penalty. And Vancouver, that's one thing that they can score on is the power play. They've got Quinn Hughes back there, their best player, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, their leading scorer. That's a way to let Vancouver hang around is take a penalty when you have a lead, and then all of a sudden, if they score a goal, they've got the momentum. Stay out of stuff like that. Just get a goal, get another goal, and keep going. Don't be the team that is the one that loses to Vancouver for maybe their only win in a week and a half span. Don't be that team. Don't give them any confidence, any momentum, because if you do, then they're going to forget about that, and their fans who do nothing but whine and complain are going to get into the game, and then all of a sudden you're going to have a tough road game in the third period that you're going to have to figure out a way to win.
Let's completely overreact to the debut for the big-time club of Daniil Boot. We talked about that a couple days ago, that he'd been called up and they were going to try him out, and He ended up skating about 12 minutes. How'd he do?
Did good with Gunther and Cooley. Didn't get any points, but he was on the ice for that second goal that Dylan Gunther scored on a breakaway on a nice feed ahead from Ian Cole. And he used his size, maybe created some more space for Gunther and Cooley out there. But I think everybody's happy with Daniil Boot. You know, he played a simple game, and maybe the advantage that he has as a 20-year-old making his NHL debut, he's played pro hockey before in the KHL in Russia. It's a really good league. You can debate whether it's the second best league, third best league in the world. But so he's played big boy hockey, right? A lot of these kids coming up through juniors, it's so easy for them. They're scoring 2 points a game, and then they're in an NHL setting, and it's, you know, you can tell they're not ready. And, you know, in the AHL, he I think played a pro game. So it wasn't a concern of Daniil coming up here and not being simple and not being detailed. So I think that's one thing that he has going for him. But it was a nice debut, and it was just good to, you know, add some juice to the lineup with those two kids, two big kids, Daniil Boot and Maverick Lamer, who had a great game too.
So we're what? We're 28 games in.
Yep.
28 games into this season, and that's a large sample size. I think a good enough sample size to assess whether the offseason decisions you made are working out. One of the biggest ones was the acquisition of J.J. Peterka. My uneducated eye says, yeah, that's worked out exactly the way this team wants it to. But do they need more from him, or is it right on pace?
Maybe, you know, you talk consistency. That's probably been the biggest word of the season for the Mammoth. He played with Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz on Wednesday night for the first time this year on the top line, and he had 4 points, 2 goals, and led the team with 6 shots, and I loved it. I thought it was great. And JJ's a guy that I think this has just kind of been who he is. He can be invisible, and then he can take over a game. And with Schmaltz and Keller, he kind of came out right off the top on Wednesday night and kind of, you know, set the tone. I love JJ. I just love the shot. I just can't get over the way that he creates offense and the way that he can say, "Oh, we're down 2-0 in the third period. I got it." So yeah, I'd give JJ. You know, if you're saying, is this what you expected? Probably, yeah. If this is what you expected, is that a C average? Okay, C average. Is there room for more? Can it be more consistent? Yeah. I mean, before the last 2 games, he had 1 goal in the last 6, right? So, you know, he's been good in spurts. He's been pretty quiet, but it'd really be nice here to wrap up this trip and coming home if him and Keller and Schmaltz could really get into a nice little groove. But him with Keller and Schmaltz, OC, kind of got those guys going. Nick Schmaltz hadn't scored a point in 8 games and had multiple points on Wednesday night.
Such a hot start to the year, and then it kind of cooled off.
Yeah, which, again, maybe he was above what you'd expect from him, right? I don't think anybody thought Nick Schmaltz was top 5 scorer in the NHL. He can put up points. He always puts up points, so maybe that averaged out a little bit, and the whole group just kind of went through a November, right? You know, temperatures all of a sudden drop, the leaves are off the trees, and it's kind of, I don't know, kind of felt like a November from the Mammoth as you look outside.
Adrian Denny, Utah Mammoth Insider, is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Between the Pipes is brought to you by Aladdin Industries and Valley Plumbing. Look for the truck with the duck for all of your plumbing and drain cleaning needs. Why have so many NHL games gone to overtime? We're on pace for the most overtime games in 20 years.
We're at kind of a point where the teams that have been rebuilding and the teams that have been winning, they've kind of met in the middle, and it's competitive. And what the stat a couple weeks ago, 78% of the games being decided by a goal or with an empty netter, and it's just kind of a breaking point where the San Jose's with Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith, and Chicago with Connor Bedard, and Utah has been a team that's been expected to be at this point. And then you've got teams like Pittsburgh, who you thought, okay, they're going into a rebuild now. We'll check back in with them maybe at the trade deadline, see if they want to do anything with Sidney Crosby. And they've been winning games, maybe a little more than expected. And then, the Florida Panthers are without Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov, their captain and their other captain. So they've kind of come back down a little bit. The Toronto Maple Leafs, I don't think anybody thought that Mitch Marner leaving would have the effect that it did when he went to Vegas, but they've been last place or second to last place in the Eastern Conference. So the building teams have kept going. Some of the teams that have been up there have kind of come down a little bit. Winnipeg's a team, their goalie's hurt, but they weren't playing the level they were last year before Connor Hellebuyck got hurt, but they've dropped 6 or 7 games. So it's been pretty even. Everybody except Vancouver and Calgary, who we're playing tonight and tomorrow.
Good time to match up against those teams.
I think so, especially coming off of the game Wednesday night and the week that Utah's had, which has been kind of like, okay, are we serious about this? Let's go.
Has the NHL given the Olympic Committee a deadline on when they've got to get this ice figured out that we talked about?
Yeah.
I saw a quote the other day. What's the percentage possibility that there's no NHL players in the Olympics? And it was an NHL I think the deputy commissioner,
Bill Daley, yeah.
And he was like, well, whatever that percentage is the percentage that you think they're going to get the rink fixed, because if they don't, no NHL players are going to be allowed to play. This would be a massive hit to the Milan Cortina Olympics. And on a personal note, all right, for a lot of folks think that Clayton Keller gets to make a Team USA appearance. How devastating would that be from a team standpoint, from a personal standpoint, given everything he's gone through this last week? If then that dream potentially got ripped away too, I mean, are we coming up to the wire on this thing?
Bill Daley's response, the deputy commissioner, was kind of like, balls in their court. I can't see it. I just can't see this not coming together, and then they might not be saying it, but my opinion is the NHL and the NHL Players Association put so much into adjusting this schedule this year and coming to an agreement for the NHL players to play in the Olympics. I can't see that they're going to let it, kind of not happen, even though publicly right now it's like they're not happy. You gotta think like, we got a guy who can help this. We'll send him over. He'll take care of it.
There's got to be. I want a movie about that guy, by the way. Like the dude he's the hockey rink equivalent of the Bruce Willis character in Armageddon, where everyone on the planet just knows he's the best driller out there. I want to know who that guy is. We have a hockey rink problem. They just call some random guy from Calgary, Alberta. A helicopter flies in. We need you to fix this thing now. I need that movie.
We've had situations like this prior to Olympics before. The one that jumps out at me the most was the Rio Olympics in 2016. And I was there for a month at those Olympic Games. So for me, that's what I remember, because I was getting ready to go and I was there, and all you heard was, oh, what a mess. Nothing's done. Nothing's finished. And we all got down there and everything was fine. And, you can say what you want to say about the condition that those facilities are in now, or the way they whipped everything up. But the Olympic Games went off without a hitch for the 1 month when you needed the things. The only other variable I'd say though is hockey rinks are a different ball game. That with the ice and maintaining that that would be the one thing that would be a cause for concern, because we've heard this before about Olympics being held in other places and they're not done, nothing's ready, this is going to be a mess, and then you turn on NBC for the opening ceremonies and everything is great and it's a fun 16 days and you forget what you heard about.
We talk sometimes about how hard it is to spread certain sports around the world, and like soccer that everyone else calls football, we've got a World Cup draw we're going to be talking about here in just a second, is the ultimate anyone can do this type sport, right? You need a semi-flat surface and a couple of cone equivalents and a ball, and then anyone can play. Hockey's at the opposite end of that spectrum, where everything is very, very hyper-specialized, including the playing surface. You have to have something, except for very cold climates, it doesn't occur naturally. Like flat ground occurs pretty naturally. Hockey rinks don't.
You've got, 2 months to get this situation handled with the ice rink? I'd say 2 months is probably a good amount of time to get it in order. It's not like, okay, we're 48 hours and we've got dirt on the playing surface, because we're still a little behind.
How closely have you paid attention to the roster debate for Team USA?
Yeah, I'd say it. I'm up to speed.
Where do you think the Mammoth players fit?
Bill Guerin is the general manager of the team, and he is the general manager of the Minnesota Wild, and did not select Clayton Keller for the Four Nations face-off last year. And it was not well received by Utah fans, obviously. I think Clayton Keller was upset about it. He's had some really, really good games against the Minnesota Wild since that Four Nations roster was unveiled. And Bill Guerin put together a roster that, it was more built around, a complete roster, not just a bunch of skill guys, right? Which I would say that Clayton Keller is probably labeled in that area as a skill guy. I think Bill Guerin's a stubborn guy, and I've heard a couple comments that he's made, kind of doubling down on that Four Nations face-off roster that he put together last year. So my opinion would be, unless he starts hearing it from others who are influential in the process, he's probably going to stick with that model. I didn't get the impression that he regretted not having a guy like Clayton Keller on the roster. And you look at it, and you'd feel pretty bad if he's not there, because just look at his body of work, and he's a captain of an NHL team, and he's a point-a-game player, and he's somebody you want around, right?
Well, obviously we're biased, but yeah, from a hockey standpoint, it seems like he's the type of guy who.
Plus, he's a winner. Gosh, he's a winner, and that's another thing that I'd add to it.
Cooley probably has to wait a little while.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think for the next one for him and Gunther, and then we're gonna have some real fun when those two are on opposing sides. When Cooley's on Team USA and Gunther's on Team Canada, JJ Peterka is on Team Germany, which is pretty much a done deal for JJ.
Sure. I intended to ask you this earlier in the conversation because we were talking about that Anaheim. That was Vejmelka's lone shutout. how important is it to NHL goaltend? I mean, the game has changed a lot. Scoring is at a very, very high clip right now. A clean sheet, what does it mean? Because there's a lot of season left to play. There's a lot of hockey, and all these guys really care about is wins, but shutouts are nice.
I think you like the shutout, right? To the point, like when you're up like that in a game, you see the players kind of, all right, we got to get the shutout done here. If they score in the final 5 minutes, it's kind of a bummer, kind of blemishes the thing. So I think the shutout's big, and happy to see Vejmelka get that shutout. And he's played pretty well. In 4 of his last 6 starts, he's allowed 2 goals or less. For me, the issue goaltending-wise has been Vitek Vanacek. But Vejmelka's had his moments too, but he's also a guy who's, pretty businesslike, and hopefully that's something that he can take and run with for Utah, getting that 27 save shutout.
That is Adrian Denny, our Utah Mammoth insider, Between the Pipes, brought to you by Aladdin Industries and Valley Plumbing. Adrian, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
Same to you. A happy Friday to everyone out there. We are 1 hour away from airing of grievances. You feel free to leave a grievance with us if you want to air it in an hour.
That's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll have an Adrian Denny grievance that we air coming up in 63 minutes. In 3 minutes, it's the Daily Dump. A lot of wild stories that we have to get into. I'll try to touch on several of them on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We're going to have to do a ticket giveaway, 877-353-0700. We were just talking hockey, all right? We're talking Utah Mammoth. We've seen a couple of hat tricks in Utah Mammoth uniforms this year. Connor McDavid had a hat trick last night, and it brought him to like 13th all-time or something. 877-353-0700. 4 tickets to see Utah basketball versus Mississippi State at the Salt Lake Showcase. If you can answer this question, and don't overthink yourself on this one, ladies and gentlemen. The all-time career leader in NHL history in hat tricks, 877-353-0700. I love a good hat trick for several reasons. Obviously, it's great to see individual player greatness, but it's also cool when that comes with fan interaction, and there is no better. Or if there is, I'll have to think of it, or maybe you can text it in. There's no better sort of call to action for fans at a sporting event than the throw your hat onto the ice. Everyone understands the assignment, and a lot of people comply when a hat trick is out there. You love to see it. Daily Dump brought to you by Valley Plumbing. Look for the truck with the duck on all of your plumbing and drain cleaning needs. The American Conference Championship is tonight at 6. Tulane, North Texas. The winner of this is very likely going to be in the college football playoff. Very likely. So effectively, the winner punches their ticket. You can listen to it right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Some added interest for people around here because, of course, Jake Retzlaff is now with that Tulane team.
Yeah, some would say the biggest game of the weekend tonight here on the station.
Is anyone saying it's the biggest game of the weekend?
Well, like Tulane fans and North Texas fans, maybe. Anyone who wears green, because they're both green-colored schools.
Fair enough.
Mean Green and the Green Wave, right?
We'll also have BYU Texas Tech, 10 a.m., right after Utah Golf Radio, right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Oh, yeah.
You can stream it on the ESPN 700 app.
That one is a little bit bigger, right?
That's the biggest game of the weekend from a local perspective, obviously. Georgia-Bama is at 2 p.m. on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Running Utes Cal Baptist. 5 p.m. tip, that's on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. It is a big, big day. Virginia, Duke, 5:30 on the sister stations, the sibling stations, 103.9, 98.3 on The Fan, and you can stream that on ESPN The Fan app.
Conference Championship weekend, let's go.
World Cup draw. They made this the biggest dang production. In fact, we should have had that on instead of this very hard to figure out golf tournament that is presented by Skechers, which are shoes that I can't understand are still being manufactured. But the world is coming to North America, United States obviously playing host for the World Cup, which is, even us non-soccer hardcores have to acknowledge, is the biggest sporting event that it's bigger than the Olympics. It is more watched than every Super Bowl. The World Cup is the world's preeminent sporting event. And the draw, they made the draw show something like, it was like the Oscars red carpet / America's Got Talent / I don't know, and one mixtape tour. It was just like random people.
Even a little C-SPAN because the president spoke too.
From all different walks of life and celebrity. We're like, Carrie Underwood's going to perform with Nelly, and we're also going to have the president there, and then Shaq and Snoop Dogg are going to be master of ceremony. It's like, what is happening here? This is the strangest thing. But the information that you're looking for is, where is the U.S. men's national team? Group D, with Australia, Paraguay, and the playoff winner, it's Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, and Kosovo in that UEFA playoff. These games for the Group D games will take place on the west coast of the United States. So perhaps a game that you could find yourself at.
Yeah, LA is obviously one of the West Coast sites. I don't know all the other ones off the top of my head, but couple-hour flight away at the most for you.
Where are the West Coast sites? I think, is Seattle hosting any games?
They might be. Yeah, probably should have looked that up before the show.
No, it's good to do production on air. It's good to do, like, the fans out there listening, James, they like to hear the keyboard clacking
and the awkward silences as we wait for the web page to load.
And you could kind of fill them with just like, yeah, okay. So L.A., Seattle.
That's a good fill by you right there.
L.A., Seattle, and San Francisco.
San Francisco, okay. And also another thing of note, and I'm not sure this is something you can look up right now, but Trey Fitzgerald, you remember on your remote at RSL, said that we're going to have World Cup nations here in our backyard. 4 of them, right? Training from Harriman to the University of Utah and everywhere in between, right?
Dude, I want it to be someone like a really cool team that we can sort of adopt.
Oh yeah. Maybe. Well, the other big thing I was about to say, maybe Messi comes to Utah much earlier than RSL is promoting right now because of the Inter Miami RSL match next year, and Argentina trains here. But the news broke yesterday. Messi did an exclusive interview with ESPN OC. I don't know if you saw this. He says it's kind of up in the air whether or not he's going to be able to play, which I think, I mean, obviously it's not going to stop soccer fans from around the world from watching when you have a big star that's not playing, but that would be, I feel like that'd still be pretty devastating to not have the greatest of all time playing and defending his World Cup title.
Yeah, that'd be a bummer. Do you know where the U.S. men's national team appears in the FIFA World Rankings right now?
17.
We are up to spot number 14, baby. 14, right between Colombia and one spot ahead of Mexico.
I'm sorry I wasn't familiar with your game. Goodness gracious.
12 is Italy, 13 is Colombia, 14 is USA, 15 is Mexico, 16 is Uruguay.
Yeah, take that, Mexico. Eat our dust. You know of the big rivalry there, the soccer rivalry.
Right? Oh, yes. The top team in the world right now, according to the FIFA rankings, James?
France.
España. It goes Spain, Argentina, France, England, Brazil in the top 5.
I knew France had to be close to the top because Mbappe's still in his prime. How about that incredible? Do you remember watching, or did you watch any of the final from the Qatar one? That incredible final, Mbappe and Messi going back and forth, France and Argentina. I hope we get something like that again this year.
I know that people don't want me spending a lot of time talking about my other thing with the PFL, but so Kylian Mbappe has been to 2 PFL fights sitting front row.
Oh.
And Cristiano Ronaldo has been to 2 PFL fights sitting front row.
The Saudi one?
Yes.
For both of them?
A couple events in Saudi and events in Paris for Kylian Mbappe. And, like, I'm not a soccer fan. I enjoy watching soccer. Like, I will watch every minute of this World Cup, and I will be painfully obnoxious. I apologize in advance to all of you because I will pretend like I know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, just like the fencing breakdown we had in the Olympics.
For however many weeks, especially the men's national teams involved, we're gonna have World Cup segments every dang day, and you're gonna be mad about it, people. You're gonna be upset, but it's summertime,
especially the soccer fans. I'm sure
the soccer fans,
you don't know what you're talking about. Stop talking about it.
That's exactly right. The soccer fans will hate it more than the non-soccer fans. That's the funny thing about the gatekeeping nature of fans.
Why don't you guys talk about it enough? Stop talking about it.
Yeah. It's like, if you're not going to talk about it at like a super high level, then don't talk about it. Well, guess what? Fake it till you make it, ladies and gentlemen. So I look forward to diving in on World Cup soccer the same way we dive in on the Olympics, and we will be diving in on the Winter Olympics when they come around. Get ready for a bobsled breakdown, okay, because these are international sporting events. It's going to be fantastic. But your group stage, West Coast, maybe you take a trip to Seattle, maybe you go to the San Francisco Bay Area. Let's avoid LA. All right, let's all agree upon that. Let's just not go down there. And you get to watch a little Team USA versus Australia. Not bad. Maybe Team USA versus Kosovo if they come out from that playoff.
Paraguay. That's my favorite part of the World Cup season is we get people saying, you stop saying Paraguay and it's Paraguay.
Oh, yeah. We learn how to say Qatar correctly for 5 minutes, and then we go back to saying Qatar.
Yeah, instead of Qatar.
Yeah.
And the new Turkey, the new name for Turkey, by the way, Turkey, right?
Turkey, yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
All right. Messi's non-committal, and Team USA's in Group D. We referenced this earlier on the show here in the Daily Dump. I want to touch on it again. Remember when Chris Kleiman cried at the post-game press conference after the comeback win by the Utes against his K-State Wildcats?
So much passion for his team.
And the athletic director came over and gave him a hug and said, hey, you're not going anywhere, brother. Because people were like talking about him on a hot seat or whatever. He's out.
He said, yeah, actually, you know what? I am going somewhere.
I want to know if somebody showed up and was just like, hey, we're going to do this in the most dignified way possible for you. But the modern college football athlete is not going to come play for you when you sit there and cry in a press conference after a game. I really want to know if this was related to that, because people joke about it sometimes. By the way, my dog is here in studio with us today.
Shout out to Rocky.
And I'm a Cesar Millan. I'm not going to say disciple, too strongly worded, but I follow the teachings of Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. Cesar Millan, okay? He's all about the hierarchy of the pack structure, right? And you make sure that you are dominant over your dog, not in a mean way, but that your dog is able to look to you as the leader of the pack, right? And in order to do that, you have to maintain certain things. You got to precede them through doorways. You have to take control of their food or their treats in order to be like, if I want to do this, I can. There's nothing you can do about it. This is mine. Then it teaches them non-aggression when people – anyway. I want to know if that dynamic played out in Manhattan, Kansas with this, where the team, the players were just like, what is he doing? And they became embarrassed by the emotion of their coach. And I don't fault him for feeling emotional. I don't fault him for even being like, man, people really aren't giving us a fair shake because we've had these close losses. I don't know that you can get away with doing that with a modern athlete, with a kid now who's making, $1 million at the quarterback position plus, who's looking at you and just being like, what are you doing, man? Why are you crying? When you're a head coach of a college football team, you're allowed to cry because you feel so inspired. You're allowed to cry when you see the military dad surprise his kids at the homecoming game. You're allowed to cry for any family or child or spouse-related reason. You're not allowed to cry if you lose. Did Chris Kleiman retire because he cried? Tell me, James.
But then you're also suggesting that maybe it was a forced retirement.
Well, that's what I mean. Was there a discussion? Because the athletic director literally there, concurrent with him showing that emotion, said, hey, arm around the shoulder. You got nothing to worry about, pal. And then he just decided 2 games later, 1 game later, he's like, you know what, I'm actually done. I'm actually stepping down. Can these things possibly be unrelated? I mean, maybe it's one of those things where he was like, maybe he saw himself and was just like, man, this is stressing me out so much that I'm crying on TV.
Needs a break.
I need to step away from this for a minute. Maybe it's that.
Maybe he needs a break. I had the thought maybe he's taking the Penn State job. No, I'm just kidding. It was odd to see that kind of emotion, and maybe it was. I could see that being the case where it's like, you know what? Clearly, and his family maybe saying, clearly this is getting to you too much right now. You can go back. you've had enough success to be able to get a college job again. Maybe you need to take a little sabbatical.
Yeah, it could be that. I don't know. It's a hard one to figure out, but they've pulled in a Wildcat man. They pulled in Kansas State alum, former quarterback, who's currently the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M, who's obviously on a nice little run here. And Colin Klein will come back to his alma mater. He will be the head coach after the playoff run for Texas A&M is done. So Kansas State maybe going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball.
Well, and so this team meeting that the players-only team meeting that they had, and they decided that we're not going to play in our bowl game even though they got to 6 wins. This is after Kleiman stepped down, or is this before Kleiman stepped down?
After.
Okay. That makes it make a lot more sense. I'm still not totally down with it though. Like, play one more game with your boys.
It's such an
after a tough season like that.
It's such an interesting thing because I totally understand that if you're like, it's been a long and it's been a rough year for Avery Johnson. Going back to that first game in Dublin.
Yeah, his family embarrassed him.
The family embarrassment and all that stuff, and he didn't play up to a standard that we had come to expect from him, and the team obviously didn't have a great year. I can understand him just being like, guys, I'm done. I can understand that. I really can. Opt out then. This team meeting where your captains, and I get it, right? There's a couple ways to look at this. Hey, our coach retired. The new guy's not going to be here. The right thing to do is to let all these other guys on staff try to find jobs for themselves, or at least to figure out if they're staying or going. We're going to be heading into the transfer portal soon. Let's just not play in a bowl game. We're 6-6, 6-6 invite for a Big 12 team. That bowl game is going to suck. All right, we're going to go to Frisco, Texas. I don't know if that's where we want to be. Let's just opt out. Sure. If you're Avery Johnson, fine. James, there are dudes on that team, I know because I was this dude on that team, on any team, who would be like, what are you talking about? I've been sitting here on a practice squad for 12 weeks. If you don't want to play, I'll go play.
Replacement players, man. Let these guys play.
Like, it's an extension of spring football. It's not going to be the best roster you can put together. But I promise you that there are guys in that room who are just like, well, you're banged up and sore. I don't even get to touch the field. I'll go play in the bowl game. Let me do it. And they don't get a chance now. So that bums me out a little bit.
Let me ask you, you obviously weren't in this situation when you were a walk-on at University of Utah. So I know you can't speak to it from experience, where you're like, the main guys are opting out. I might get a chance to play that specifically that situation. But having been a walk-on on a successful team that went to a bowl and beyond, right? Would you have felt like you could have voiced that when your team leaders, the big dogs in the room that you spent, you've not been shy about Urban Meyer in particular saying, like, you walk-ons don't matter.
Yeah.
In that environment, would you as a walk-on have felt like voicing what you just said? Yeah. Hey, well, you know what? We'll play.
In this context, by the way, Urban's gone, right? If we're making the apples comparison. And James, honestly, I don't know. Probably not.
That's would have been my thought too. I put myself in those shoes. I could see myself going, man, I wish I could stand up and say, you guys don't want to play, fine. Let us play.
Like, now, I'll say this. If they were like, all right, raise your hand if you want to play, I would have looked around the room, and even if I was the only hand in the air, I would have been, because I'm a jackass and I'm confident enough, I would have raised my hand. And then if they're like, what are you talking about? Nobody else wants to. I'd be like, yeah, well, that's because you guys are all played. I've been here all year, and I got 1 rep or 0 reps or 10 reps or whatever. I'm trying to be a college football player, man. I grew up down the street from here. This is what I want. This is my dream, not to get paid $1 million. I just want to be a college football player. Like, yeah, I know I suck. I'll play. I would have done at least that, but I don't think I would have been like, Avery Johnson, don't be a baby. We're playing. You know what I mean? If Alex Smith was just like, guys, I'm off to the NFL. I'm going to be the number one pick. I wouldn't be like, well, then let me play, Alex. Right? If our guy Weddle, who joins us every single week, was just like, dude, my knee hurts. I don't want to. Or Morgan Scalley. You know what? It's been a great run. I'm not gonna opt into this bowl game. I think we as a team should just hit the reset button. I don't know that I would have been like campaigned against them. And that's, again, not everyone is as far down the list of priority as I was. I don't know where you're at, but like, we're learning that if you're an NIL guy, if you're the recipient of NIL money, you're probably 1 through 45 on a roster. I really have a hard time believing that 45 through 80 don't want to play. Even if it's going to be a dumb bowl game where you get like a recliner or a camcorder for the bowl gift.
Camcorder in 2025.
Yeah, like, sir, what is this? My phone has a better camera than this. There's a nice little camcorder. It takes AA batteries. Would you like to buy some of those? I mean, yeah, Kansas State has opted out of a bowl game, and times are different. I totally understand. All right, Lee Sterling's going to join us next to handicap some of the weekend. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome the best handicapper in the business, Lee Sterling of Paramount Sports, with picks for the weekend, a big-time weekend, conference championship weekend, in fact. Lee, welcome. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Good. How about yourself? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was phenomenal. By the way, for all of you who listened last week, and we were talking to Lee about the pie contest that his family does, he sent me the breakdown, and, I mean, Lee, I'll let you tell it, but what an upset.
Yeah, so my oldest always makes a banana cream pie, and she tried to get, I think, a little too creative. She had kind of like an Oreo crust, and she had vanilla wafers in there and a couple different types of nuts, and I'm just more of like a straight, thick, hearty banana guy. And then the huckleberry pie was good, but it was, it wasn't warm. And my son-in-law and my youngest daughter's boyfriend made an apple pie, and they had vanilla bean ice cream on top of it. And 5-1 underdog came in and won. And both daughters didn't talk to me for about 36 hours.
Fantastic.
But like the college football committee, we're going to change the rules, and they kind of go on next year. No pie. I'm sorry, not no pie. No ice cream. So you can't add like a topping to it. So I got to be fair to them, but it'll probably make them work harder next year.
I like it. That's amazing. All right, let's get into these picks. Georgia, Bama. Georgia is a 2.5-point favorite in the SEC championship. There's a lot of conversation that even if Alabama loses this, a 3-loss Bama team could end up in the field of 12. How do you see this game playing out? Will that be a discussion?
Well, Hunter Yurachek, his interview afterwards was disgraceful. I mean, talking about how they moved them up 1 point because they beat a 5-7, a poor Auburn team. He even said that they were impressed with the way they started. They were up 17-0, had a great play on 4th and 2, and they beat a really good Auburn team at home. Auburn didn't win a conference game at home. They even lost to Kentucky at home. So let's be honest, they're in bed together, the SEC and the ESPN, and what he said made no sense at all. They moved them up one spot to protect them in case they get blown out. I think they are going to get blown out here. I think Georgia's getting better as the season progresses. They're looking for revenge for that first loss early in the year. They had a 33-game home winning streak here. And I think Alabama's getting worse. They only scored 2 touchdowns against LSU, and they escaped the Auburn game. They were outgained by over 130 yards here. We're going to have chaos on Sunday at about 12 noon Eastern, 10 a.m. in the morning your time. Georgia blows out Auburn 35-20.
Georgia with a big one, according to Paramount Sports and Lee Sterling. All right, Mountain West Conference Championship game. These are two teams and schools that people in these parts are very, very familiar with, either because of past history as conference mates, coaching familiarity, stuff like that. Boise State is a 3.5-point favorite against Dan Mullen's UNLV team. How does it play out?
UNLV hasn't beaten Boise State since probably I read for my summer reading Moby Dick for the summer reading. It's been that long. And I probably skimmed through the book there. But story for another day. Here's the deal with Boise State. They played Utah State last week, trailing most of the game, found a way to get back in it, and they beat a dual-threat quarterback in Bryson Barnes, one of the best. Then October 18th, they played UNLV. They were leading 14-3, and UNLV came storming back with a dual-threat quarterback, Anthony Calandria, and they closed the score to 28-24. Then they pulled away with a 21-0 third quarter, won the game 56-31. The weather is not going to be good. That favors Boise State here. They're getting their starting quarterback back. I like Boise big, 38-20.
The Boise State Broncos continue to be one of those class group of 5 teams with a win over UNLV in the conference championship, according to Lee Sterling's pick. We'll get to Texas Tech, BYU last. NFL games, Packers, Bears, obviously a lot of history in this one. The Bears look like a different team. The Packers have Jordan Love at the quarterback spot, 6.5-point favorites for Green Bay. Do they win? Do they cover?
Here's what I love about Ben Johnson. Not just that he's a great play caller. I think he's molded Caleb Williams into a leader and able to understand what the quarterback position is about. He's not able to do what Tom Brady could do and find 3 or 4 different receivers on a play. So he tells them, find the first guy. If he's open, throw the ball. If not, go to the second guy. And if for some reason, if they're both covered, you know what? Throw the ball away. Live to fight another day. Don't turn the ball over, and let's win the time of possession. You have a 2-0 turnover advantage in a game, you're going to win 88% of your games. And I just think that Green Bay still has some weaknesses on the offensive line. Their receivers 2 weeks ago dropped 7 passes in a game, and I think their cornerbacks aren't anything special. Packers 1-6 against the spread when laying 3 or more points. I think Green Bay escapes here, 27-24.
The Broncos are 10-2, and Bo Nix does things that if it were Patrick Mahomes doing them, SportsCenter would never shut up about it. But you hardly see it because it's Bo Nix.
Right.
Broncos are 7.5-point favorites against the Raiders. Do they keep rolling?
I like what they in overtime. They realized the Washington defense, they were gassed. So what they do, they ran no huddle. They went down in like 7 plays, touchdown. They did get scored on, which surprised me because their defense is so good. But I like the change in pace. I think they need to speed it up more. I think that this Raiders team has quit here. They've already lost their offensive coordinator. He was fired. They're 1, 2, and 3 receivers. I don't know if they're even the 4th, 5th, or 6th best on other bad teams. They're that bad. So I like the Broncos. I think they pull away here, 27-10.
Game of the week, you got the best team in what might be the best division in football, the Rams, and they're favorites against the Cardinals, who are they the only team that's eliminated from the playoffs already?
No, there's a couple more, but they're up there. Anyone wants to get the Rams and the Cardinals? Is it going to be a blowout, or can the Cards keep it close? Be one of the first 5 callers. Call 800-400-9741. Give you the game for free. We're on a roll. Won last night with Detroit. Won every single day over the Thanksgiving break, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We actually passed on Monday. NFL, we're 37-17-1 the last 11 weeks, last 55 games. So you want to hop on board, call Double Down December, every single game through December 31st, just $397. If you use coupon code SAVE100 at checkout, ParamountSports.com.
I got to sneak this one in, Lee. UFC 323, Las Vegas, this coming Saturday. Merab Dvalishvili, one of my favorite fighters in the game right now, the most active champion, both in the way he fights and how often he's willing to fight, taking on Peter Yan again. How do you see this main event going?
I'm going to take a different approach. I call this bet a little, win a lot. I'm going to bet that this fight doesn't go the distance. I think Merab is either going to choke him out, get on top of him, and slowly but surely, like a snake, take him out. Or I would not be too shocked if Peter Yan catches Merab here with a punch, gets on top, knocks him out, or ground and pound. I'm going to say the fight doesn't go the distance, plus 285. Bet a little, win a lot.
Plus odds for inside the distance on a world title fight, Peter Yan, Merab Dvalishvili. That'll be a fun one at UFC 323. All right, our game of the week, the one that everyone here wants to hear about, Texas Tech, BYU, Big 12 Championship. Tech is a 12.5-point favorite against the Cougs. How does the Big 12 Championship play out?
Well, I think by playing a team earlier in the year, it helps you out. The game, and I watched the game. I looked at one of my friends at the game. It was ending, and I said, this score should have been 40-0. I mean, Texas Tech was that dominant. Their defense is great. They're top 10 in almost every major statistical category. But it just wasn't BYU's day. I mean, you could sense it from the beginning. Having passes go off receivers' hands right into Texas Tech defenders' arms. The play calling wasn't sharp. And it happens sometimes. You fought, you just don't have it sometimes. But they still won 11 of their 12 games, every other game. I think they're going to make adjustments here. I think by Kalani Sitake coming back, they're going to be fired up here. 12.5 is too much. This game reminds me of Arizona State last year against Texas. I think Tech will prevail, but they're going to escape 30-24. It wouldn't shock me if this is a game that comes down to the last possession, maybe even the last play. I like BYU big plus the points.
BYU covers, but Tech probably wins. Before I let you go, is Myles Garrett going to break the sack record?
Easy. He's already has 19. He might have 3 or 4 in the game on Sunday. So, I mean, I talked to an offensive lineman who was at my daughter's wedding this summer, and I asked him point blank, best defensive lineman you face. He didn't even hesitate, Myles Garrett. I said, the guy you don't want to face, the weirdest. He goes, Jeffrey Simmons. He says, Jeffrey Simmons looks up everything about you and your family. He said he will mention every person in your family. He'll even find out some ex-girlfriends, and he'll be talking about them all game long. So thought that was interesting and fun.
Crazy. Lee, always appreciate your insight and your time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, buddy. Take care. Be safe.
Lee Sterling, ParamountSports.com, best handicapper in the business. He says Tech wins, but BYU covers. I think I could see it playing out exactly like that. I mean, Texas Tech has been dominant. We're gonna get into this matchup by the numbers, actually. The same way we have with so many of these Utah football games, looking at the real matchup, what's going on, and then airing of grievances in 22 minutes. Get your grievances ready. This time of year, there are people out there who need your help. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers invite you to help those at the road home this holiday season with blankets, coats, shoes, hats, gloves. New, lightly used, they'll take them. Drop-off donations at Rocky Mountain Chevy dealers. Visit ESPN700sports.com for the dealer locations. Spread the warmth and help others find their way home. A look at the Big 12 championship game next on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. All right, a breakdown of the Big 12 Championship brought to you by America First Credit Union. They've given us Coordinator's Corner all year long. They continue to sponsor all of our college football content here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, how does this thing actually play out? You heard what Lee Sterling said about BYU making this closer, the adjustments that you can make after you've seen a team already. We've talked about it with many different coaches, many different players. This is very, very true in the fight world, certainly. The rematch, if you won the first one, the rematch is actually harder for you to adjust to as the winner. Because what do you need to adjust? You won. You did the thing you were supposed to do. And Texas Tech, I'm sure, came away from that game feeling like the game against BYU, the first matchup, feeling like the self-inflicted wounds were the only reason that game was close. I think that Kalani Sitake and his staff came away and said, hey, this game could have been a lot worse, guys. We have to be, 50% better, 75% better, 80% better, whatever it is. And also the stakes are higher for BYU. I don't think that's insignificant here, and I think we saw that play out a little bit in rivalry weekend. Texas A&M, I don't want to take anything away from Texas. I don't want to give anything extra to Texas either. But Texas A&M was kind of the team that I think is the best example of, hey, we're a little bit bulletproof right now, and if we don't come out at our very, very best, if we're not as fired up as we need to be, if we lose, the stakes in this one are actually kind of minimal for us. That is true for Texas Tech, and they seem like a special team. I don't want to take any credit away from Joey McGuire and Sheil Wood and the staff and what they've done this year. The players, especially this mercenary unit that they've all put together, I mean, they've turned themselves into a real team, and they deserve credit for that. The leadership on that team is obviously pretty elite, and they're elite players on top of it, which is not always the case. But I don't know how you completely avoid human nature, where you don't take this game as personally as BYU does because you won the first one. You don't need revenge because you won the first one. And you don't need to win this game in order to make it into the college football playoff. In a perfect world, the motivation is all internal, and the motivation is greatness and to be legendary and to be as close to perfect as you can be. Tech's not fighting for an undefeated season. Tech is fighting to try to make a run in this playoff, and this game is not required for them to make a run in the playoff. The Big 12 is not in this position, but watch. There are going to be conversations in the next 5 years about an SEC team or teams and a Big 10 team or teams potentially wanting to opt out of a conference championship appearance because of the risk of injury, because of the risk of if you're on the bubble like Alabama's on the bubble, and a loss could potentially put you on the wrong side of the bubble, well, then you're actually being punished by being invited to the conference championship game. I still, and I've stated this many times, I still want the path to a college football playoff to be through a conference championship game if you're in the Power Four. A win, right? If BYU makes it into the college football playoff with a win, that's something that could not ever be taken away from them or rationalized away or told like, oh, you got gifted this because you're in the whatever. There's 6 SEC teams that half the country or more is going to be looking at and going like, the only reason you're in this conversation is because you're in the SEC and you guys control everything. The winner of the conference championship game, no one gets to take it away from you. No one gets to claim it's anything else. Then you just won the games you were supposed to win. That, to me, is the purest form of this competition. If Utah had made it into the college football playoff by style points, and we're like somehow in a different world, a third Big 12 team, would I have celebrated it and we would have gassed it up and we would have gone down to the college football playoff game and all that stuff? Yeah, sure. But would it have been the same as winning a conference championship to get in? No. Would it have been as good of a season as 2021? No. Making it into an expanded field is not the same thing as winning your way into the college football playoff. There was a time when Utah went into a conference championship game against Oregon in this exact same scenario BYU is in right now, but it was a 4-team playoff. It was not an expanded field to accommodate more people. Utah was in this position that BYU finds themselves in when we were down to 4. That would have been special. That would have been something that no one ever gets to take away from you. Now, credit to Oregon. They did what they needed to do. And if they hadn't stubbed their toe against Arizona State a couple weeks prior to that game, they would have been the one that went into the conference or the college football playoff, as conference champions. And that might have changed the entire fate of the Pac-12 conference, by the way. Probably not, because USC was the first domino to fall, but maybe. And the reason I even bother to bring any of this up is because there are certain paths into the college football playoff. In the Big 12, most of the time you're going to have to do it the hard way. There are teams like Notre Dame and there are teams like Alabama and Texas that are going to be given the benefit of the doubt, and they're not going to have to do it the hard way. And in most years, Texas Tech is going to have to do it the hard way. Not this year. Texas Tech doesn't need this game. And because of that, I think BYU is a lot more dangerous here. Because human nature is almost undefeated. It's not like Father Time, who is totally undefeated, but human nature is almost undefeated.
What are they, 90% win percentage? Is that what we're saying? Human nature?
Yeah.
Father Time's 1,000%.
Father Time's batting 1,000.
Father Time's 1,000. Human nature's 900. Pretty good.
It's very close, right? And this Texas Tech team has shown us that it is vulnerable even to human nature. If they were this Goliath that's completely unbeatable, then Arizona State wouldn't have got over on them.
They would have been Father Time.
So I'm really, really curious to see how this thing actually plays out. And the question I have to ask, and I know we don't have a lot of BYU fans listening, but if you're a Utah fan and you want to weigh in on this.
And we got the resident BYU fan who likes to text in. Can
BYU win this game if they rush for about 100 yards? I think the answer to that is no. BYU averages almost 200 yards a game. Texas Tech gives up 60 yards a game. So if you meet somewhere in the middle there and you expect that Texas Tech is going to be good enough to hold Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year L.J. Martin well below his average and to hold freshman running phenom quarterback Bear Bachmeier to well below his average, and you give them, even if they give up over 100 yards on the ground, but it's just barely, can BYU win a game like that?
What was the number in the game the game in Lubbock? Excuse me.
The rushing number for BYU? Yeah. Stand by. 29-7 was the final in this one. And BYU rushed for 67 yards in the game.
Oh, so they held him right on their average, what they give up to opponents. Okay.
Yes. I'm giving BYU extra credit here and saying that they will be improved over the last time that they played against Texas Tech. Texas Tech gives up 68.9 yards per game on the ground. And so they held BYU even below the average in the first meeting. Now, is Bear Bachmeier, he has shown us in weeks since this game, he's had some big passing games, but it wasn't that long ago, right? It was 3 games ago. So my question is, do you think Texas Tech giving up even 100 yards, even if they go 40 yards over their average, can BYU win that football game? And I think the answer to that is no. I think BYU needs to run for more yards than that in order to win this game.
And one way, just to add a little bit more context to this. One way that BYU could get to triple digits, if not more, is LJ Martin was playing hurt in that game in Lubbock, and he's much more healthy now than he was. I mean, if you weren't sure about that, all you had to do was watch the Cincinnati game in the regular the penultimate game of the regular season there, where he had over 200 yards rushing. So that's a way that they could get to a much higher number. I'm with you, though. I think it's unreasonable to expect that they get anywhere close to their season output rushing against this defense in Texas Tech.
And look, what BYU, whether you love them or hate them, and most people that listen to this show, they don't really like BYU, but what you can give them credit for this year is they have been relatively even-keeled. They've been relatively consistent. They've been able to run the football. They've been able to control the clock. If LJ Martin's not having a great day, Bear Bachmeier does a good job moving the ball with his feet, right? Utah did a relatively good job against BYU in most cases of limiting LJ Martin. He had a couple of big runs, but Bear Bachmeier busted the ones that really broke your back, right? So that's something that can kill you. Now, you bring up a really great point. LJ Martin had 10 carries for 35 yards in the first game against Texas Tech. That's a testament to the fact that he wasn't healthy, because there's absolutely no way you're only giving your best player 10 carries if he's good to go.
The other thing about it is they were trailing for the whole game too, by double digits for most of the game. So that makes it so a lot of offensive coordinators, including Aaron Roderick, is like, well, we got to throw the ball more. But even in that case, he's getting 20 carries, right? He's getting double that if he's healthy. You would think.
Yes. But to the Red Raiders' credit, what does BYU do, even though they are trailing in a lot of that game, and they have to try to balance it out, or otherwise, you're just going to drop 8 and you're going to take away the pass on a freshman quarterback. So Aaron Roderick said, okay, we got to run the quarterback a little bit more. And Bear Bachmeier is pretty darn good. He averaged 1.1 yards per carry against Texas Tech. They are the best rush defense in the country, and it's not really close. The all-conference teams came out. Jacob Rodriguez, David Bailey, those were the top 2 vote-getters in Defensive Player of the Year. They're on the same team. They're in the same front 6. 3 of the 4 defensive linemen that made first team, actually there were 5 defensive linemen that made first team. We'll get to that here in the airing of grievances. We're from Texas Tech. This is a formidable, perhaps in the Big 12 Conference, like all-time great defense. So my question for BYU is, you're 12.5-point dogs. You just had this big moral victory as a school, as a program, as a kind of collective body, that one of the big borderline blue blood programs in the country wanted your guy, and he said, no, I'd rather stay here. And yes, you compensated him, but there's nothing wrong with that. You proved that you can keep up with the big boys from the off-the-field competition standpoint. Now you have an opportunity tomorrow at 10 a.m. Mountain Time to prove that you can keep up with the big boys on the field. Because Texas Tech has turned themselves into a big boy. And that is something that, as painful as it is to acknowledge, that if you have a billionaire donor who once played on your football team, you're in a really good spot in 2025. Texas Tech, it's a concept that we didn't need to prove, but in the Big 12 Conference, they have proven it. Texas Tech went out this offseason with a good eye for talent and with a coaching staff that is really good at making a unit come together quickly. They purchased a playoff team because regardless of win or loss, Tech is in. Cody Campbell went and bought his alma mater a spot in the college football playoff. Pretty much single-handedly by all accounts. You know how cool that is for him? To see the return on investment, and again, it's not a financial return on investment, but to be like, look, guys, I'm like a 35-year-old billionaire. I'm passionate about West Texas football. I'm passionate about the Red Raiders. Here's a blank checkbook, but you better make it work. And they did. They did better than anyone has so far, even in this era of pay for play.
Yeah, good for him. And yeah, you're right. It's got to be so gratifying for him. Reminder, Big 12 championship game, BYU, Texas Tech, 10 a.m. here on the station tomorrow, right after Utah Golf Radio, which, of course, goes 8 to 10. Paul Pugmire, Jan Brownstein will have you until the championship game. So you can listen to that here as you're driving around, running some errands. Do we think that it being the first game of the day and BYU, if they lose, they certainly are Georgia fans. BYU fans are Georgia fans, and to do what Lee Sterling thinks that Georgia's going to do, blow out Alabama, leave no doubt, and maybe a couple of these other outcomes, hoping for a couple of these other outcomes to go their way. Do you think it helps BYU that they're the first game of the day, knowing that even if you'd be tempted to scoreboard watch, you just got just focus on this game?
100%. It's very helpful because human nature is almost undefeated, right? You're like, okay, I mean,
they say SEC championship was at 10. Georgia wins 35-0. You're tempted to go, okay, we are good.
We're good.
And then you go and play and you lay an egg.
You're
right?
just like, oh, dang it, we're not good. I'm really bad. And we just got blown out. And now suddenly the committee's just like, we didn't really believe in you in the first place. Now we believe in Vanderbilt or Miami more. Like, BYU just flat out needs to win this game. I've seen a couple people say it. I've heard a couple people say it. I'm not going to pretend this is my idea. But, the playoff starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. for BYU. It's win in advance, lose and go home. This is single elimination for BYU. And the difference, the gulf between winning against Texas Tech, being a Big 12 champion, and losing this game and going to the Outback Bowl that's the Pacific Ocean, man. That is massive. Your season feels so much different, even though they've earned a lot. They've done great things. I actually don't really like the way that the fan base and a lot of the BYU supporters have spent a ton of energy this week being like, if we lose, we should get in, instead of we can win this game. There's almost like a cultural capitulation to we're probably not going to beat Texas Tech, but we still should be there. Instead of being like, well, let's just go win, and then we don't have to worry about it. That's how the team's got to be. That's how the team is. That's how the coaching staff is. Easier said than done. 1624 says what I think is going to happen. I don't think BYU crosses the 50. I think they get blanked. Tech's rush defense, I believe, is top 3. That doesn't change. We'll play even better to prove to the nation they are a top 2 team. That's someone rooting hard against the rival. I can't do that the same way the average Utah football fan can because of my respect and affection for people on that coaching staff. But, man, it would be a hard pill to swallow for Utah fans if BYU wins a Big 12 championship before they do.
It gets to the playoff before they do. Because there's something I think about quite a bit, OC, when it comes to the last 20 years of the rivalry. In the Mountain West era, BYU came into that era with all the tradition, the national championship. Utah's the newcomer to being a really good football program, right, when it comes to the rivalry. And Utah becomes, even though BYU has a national championship from the 80s, Utah's the one that busts through the BCS and gets the bigger headline and does it twice. And
Utah unequivocally is the more nationally relevant program on Friday, December 5th, 2025. On Saturday, December 6th, 2025, BYU could change that.
And BYU in those Mountain West years, they won some of those conference championships, but they had the 10-2 seasons, right? You almost busted through the BCS. Good job. You won the Group of 5 championship, the mid-major championship. Good for you. When we win the championship, speaking for Utah, we bust through the BCS and we beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, right? And then you go Independence Pac-12 era. Utah is the first to break through as a Power 5 conference champion and continues that national relevance. And then we get to this Big 12 era, and all of a sudden it feels like it's completely flipped, at least at this point, like you said, Friday, December 5th. And even though Utah has been the first to those recent like big milestones, BYU could be the one that's like, you know what, now it's our turn, which is just wild. Another great wrinkle to the rivalry.
I mean, imagine what's at stake here. And it's not, as a Utah player, coach, fan, you have no control over it. The scenario you had control over, you missed making 4 extra plays in Provo that would have won you that game. BYU made the plays, so they win. So there's this sprint right now at the front of the pack in the Big 12 Conference. And Texas Tech is 2 steps ahead because they got the money and they've got the wins and they've got a playoff spot this year, all right? And then a step behind them is BYU, who could, in this final stretch, they could even pass up Texas Tech for now. And then a step behind BYU, so 2 steps behind Texas Tech, is Utah right now, right? If Tech loses the game against BYU, they're still 2 steps ahead of Utah because they're in the playoff and they've got the wins and they got the money, right? If BYU pulls ahead of Texas Tech here, now they're 2 or 3 steps ahead of Utah. If they lose this game, they're a rivalry win ahead, and that's it. Well, probably then the money ahead too, if what the reports are about Kalani's NIL commitment is to be believed. But you're still there. You're still in a situation where a nice little surge, you pass them up, you're good. If BYU wins this game and makes it into the college football playoff as a conference champion, now Utah's got real work to do, like very, very difficult work to do to catch up. If BYU loses, then it really just comes down to who wins the rivalry game next year. If BYU wins this conference championship game, the Pula Twins probably make an announcement right after. Like, a lot is riding on this. And all of us have to sit on our hands at 10 a.m. and watch and just be like, okay, I hope this goes well for Utah. That's tough. It's not a good position to be in. And we can air some grievances about it in 3 minutes. Fire up those texting fingers, 877-353-0700. Air your grievances now on the Sean O'Connell Show, Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700. Air your grievances now on the Sean O'Connell Show. From Jeff in Sandy. Grievance with the College Football Playoff Committee. It has become the SEC Big Ten Notre Dame Invitational. It's a valid grievance, and it's one that the chair of the committee displays every week now with mental gymnastics about why a Alabama win over a 5-7 Auburn team is reason to move up, but a Utah win over a 5-7 Kansas team is going to get them bumped down. Look no further than that.
Both of them on rivalry weekend, by the way. Big rivals.
Utah,
both games.
Kansas, huge rivals. Just dumb. 0525. Here's my advice. Don't lose football games. Okay, that's not a grievance.
I think that was in response to us talking about how it sucks that BYU is going to be left out if they lose the game.
Fair enough.
I think that rather than a grievance. But yeah.
No, fair enough. And you're right. If BYU loses the game, they understand the assignment, right? Everyone's on the same page. Not the hardcore BYU fan, but the rest of the nation, the coaching staff, and the players, in their heart of hearts, they can campaign and say all the right things that they want. They know that if they don't win this game, they're not getting into the college football playoff. It is, like Bill said, Bill Riley, who joined us earlier in the show, it's a little bit liberating to be like, all right, it's a playoff game for us. And Texas Tech doesn't have that urgency. That should be an advantage for BYU, whether it is or not, whether it's a significant enough advantage or not, to be determined. Grievance, being broke on Black Friday because you have to pay bills. Adulting is not fun. Yeah, it's not. Black Friday, they had some good sales this year, but bills are always due.
Yeah, and those sales aren't quite as good for some reason. Yeah.
Grievance, Utah drivers in wet conditions. You know what I'm talking about, 1013. I knew there would be a driving grievance today because we've had some bad weather. And, yeah. By the way, do you know what state has the best drivers according to the National Transportation Safety Board?
I do not.
Michigan has the best drivers.
Yeah, well, fine.
All right. You still live in almost Canada. Shut it. 1943, airing of grievance. CFP selection committee overall. I love the ideas that we were going over yesterday. Oh, yeah. The team's not in conference championship games playing this weekend for a last chance to get in. Yeah, John Gruden was saying the same thing. And you're damn right. It would be the best thing to do with this weekend and to solve some of these debates. Bill elucidated it perfectly. He said, look, Utah's a really good team. 10-2 is an amazing season. There's not a signature win on the record because your signature opponents, that you lost to both of them, right? Number 4 and number 11, you lost both of those games. So if you need a ranked win, schedule a ranked win and see if you can get one. Maybe it's not enough for the committee, but it's still a great way to end your season, and it counts as a bowl game. I have a grievance I want to air, okay?
All right.
I'm not necessarily the handiest of guys. I don't really enjoy the home improvement project all that much, but I do it what I'm supposed to do as a husband. And my wife was she wanted these light fixtures put in, all right? And she started the job and was just like, I did it wrong, finish it. And I was like, okay, on one of them at least. And my grievance is with when you try to go with a budget-friendly light fixture, and I don't know where she ordered them from, Amazon or Temu or whatever, there is no backup hardware, okay? There are no extra minuscule, tiny little brass screws that do the finish and get you to put the thing on the bracket. And it's always that weird angle. You know what I'm talking about, James?
Oh, yeah.
When you're trying to mount something on a wall, it's like they forgot that screwdrivers have handles, and handles have to have some kind of thickness to them.
And there are those screwdrivers that are really cool now that do kind of bend and whatever, but most screwdrivers are straight. You got to put it in there straight.
And you could magnetize the screw so it sticks on the end of the screwdriver, but then as soon as there's any pressure, that magnet's not holding strong.
Yeah.
And what happens?
You lose the screw.
The screw you hear it falls off, you utter a curse word under your breath, and then you hear like a clickety clackety click as it bounces on the floor, and then you look and it is gone.
Yeah, it's under the oven or under the fridge.
It's gone.
It's gone.
And there's no backup. So now you spend who knows how much time on hands and knees, phone light out, looking for some contrast in the flooring, some little glint of brass shine. Okay, so I do that on the hardwood floor. Don't get fancy, people. It's a laminate. And then in our daughter's room, hey, we got to have this fancy chandelier-looking thing instead of the regular light. I'm like, fine, I'll put it in. No extra screws again. There's carpet in that room, James. Guess what color the chandelier is? It's like an off-white. Guess what color the carpet is? It's like a cream. You lose those screws? Am I finding those things?
You're done. Well, you find them when you step on them. Yeah.
It was a no less than 3.5 hour process because I spent 90-plus minutes looking for extra screws that I had dropped on the floor. If there's anyone out there, aside from magnetism, who can find a way to guarantee I'm not going to lose a screw, I will pay you for that idea. Or, instead of that, manufacturers of these lighting fixtures, throw in an extra 3 screws for me, would you?
Yeah, that'll be an extra $3.
Like if you, there's some places when you go buy IKEA furniture, that's not exactly the most expensive and highest quality stuff. They have extra hardware in there.
Oh yeah, and some of their things you got they're not screws, but things like brackets type things you got to screw in have like they're cut in a way that it's not totally inconvenient. You don't hurt your shoulder trying to reach around in that awkward spot. So yeah, I mean IKEA, you're right. It's kind of more budget furniture and it's kind of a pain to put it all together yourself, but they at least have tried to make it a lot more convenient for you than some of these other places.
Got me real fired up.
Oh yeah,
wasting a lot of time.
Terrible. You lose a screw in that case, and then you are what? OC, you're screwed.
Yeah, correct. And then my second grievance, I have to air this. All right, on principle, I have to air this, and you'll hear it from me again after basketball season. So here's the total number of players on the first team offense for the Big 12 all-conference football team. Let's see. There's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs. That's 3. Okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers. We're up to 7. All right, now there's 2 tight end / flex players. That's 9. 9 players on the offense so far. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive linemen. Okay. Though there's 14 players on this team, you get a penalty every play, by the way, if you try out 14 players. And the defense we're running, some people are like, all right, are we going to run a 4-3 defense? Are we going to run a 3-4? Are we going to get crazy? If it's a great D-line year, we're going to run that express package. We're going to go 5-2-4. No, here's what we're doing. Just so you guys know. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 first-team defensive linemen. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 linebackers. So we're running a 5-4 front.
Absolutely.
With only 2 defensive backs? That's crazy.
Try running on that, OC.
That's defensive suicide. They're just going to throw the ball over the top on you. Nope. We also, on this first-team all-conference, have 4, 5 defensive backs that are first-team all-conference.
So that puts you – that's 14 again, right? So 14 on each side. Each team's – you're just offsetting penalties all game long.
And 2 punters.
2 punters.
Look, I understand it's hard to narrow it down. I understand that there's going to be radio guys like me who are just like, what do you mean Caleb Lomu is not a first-team offensive lineman? What do you mean you're going to give all the honorees at the linebacker spot to, like, Texas Tech guys? Well, stop it. You have to make a first-team all-conference fit the actual number of players on the field. It can't be 14 first-team all-conference players. There can't be a 5-4 defensive front with 5 more defensive backs. You can't do it. Grievance!
This is one of my biggest pet peeves too, and I'm convinced it's kind of the old era of college sticking around and like, well, all these guys they're not professionals. They're just playing out there with all their heart and might and strength and all this stuff. They all deserve some kind of honor, some kind of honor for how hard they play and blah 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 blah. No, like there's only 11. I'm sorry. The other 3 you want to give a participation trophy to make that analogy in this case, like, okay, put them as honorable mention. All right? Like, there's only 11 guys on the field. The Pac-12 basketball, you talked about this being a problem in basketball too, as I'm sure you're very familiar with, being on Pac-12 radio for all those years. The Pac-12 basketball one was the worst of all of them. You had like 10 guys on each team.
It was literally 10. They would say first team all-conference
Plus
basketball.
they had honorable mention
is
team.
10 players. You're like, what are you doing? You're not first team. There's 5 guys on the first team. There's 5 guys on the second team. You could do third team. Like that's what Phil Steele does. We talked to Phil Steele. We've done the Phil Steele guide. Phil Steele does the preseason all-conference stuff, preseason all-America stuff. He goes 5 teams deep instead of just being like, here are 10 defensive linemen that are first team all-conference or first team all-American. That's not what you do. You give me 11 on each. And if you're not in the top 11, you're on the second team. And if you're not in the second 11, you're on the third team. And if you're not in the third 11, you're honorable mention. Okay? Knock it off, all conference fudging of the rules.
And guess what? I promise you, these 18 to 3-year-olds, 18 to 25-year-olds are not going to their lives are not going to be destroyed if they thought they were a first teamer and they got on the second team instead. Like it's going to be okay for these guys.
We just got some very meta advice on the losing the screws, losing the hardware. Stay where you are and let the screw find you.
Hey, I'm sure you never tried that though, so you can't say it doesn't work.
I've never tried it. I don't know.
Maybe with a big magnet. Just stay where you are and hold a big magnet. It will find you. Also, they heard someone understood why I was so fine, Michigan, your best drivers.
Yeah,
the Buckeye. You still lost to Ohio State this year, so eat that. All right,
it's okay. You can. The state of Michigan hasn't offended you, James. It's not the Michigan Wolverines are the best drivers in the country. It's the state of Michigan.
Yeah, it's Julian Sayin that's best driver in the country, right down your throat. Let's go.
All right. We're going to give away some Evanescence tickets and talk with Spence Checketts next on the Sean O'Connell Show as we wrap it up. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Evanescence tickets. 877-353-0700 if you know the answer to this trivia question for a pair of Evanescence tickets when they come July 25th to Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. In the first matchup between Texas Tech and BYU this year, Texas Tech held BYU to how many rushing yards? 877-353-0700. I think that's the key to the game. We talked about it earlier this hour. First matchup between Texas Tech and BYU. How many rushing yards were the Cougars able to gain? Sean O'Connell Show wrapping up. The Drive with Spence Checketts is next. The Big 12 Championship can be heard right here tomorrow on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Spence, how are you?
Home of the Cougs.
Whoa.
Big 12 champion. Oh,
What?
wait.
Nope.
Are we not rising and shouting?
Dump that.
Okay.
Dump it.
Isn't it kind of ironic that we have the BYU Texas Tech game on our station?
Well, it's kind of cool, actually, because we get all the championship games because we're a big deal.
Well said. I can't really add to that. It's a good point. I don't know the answer to your question. I know it wasn't much. And exactly, I heard you talking about this earlier. Like, I think Bears had some games where he's shown the ability to make some plays through the air, but most of the games he's had where he's passed it well against pretty inferior competition, it feels like BYU has to run it. If I recall correctly, LJ not healthy during the first Texas Tech game. We'll see if that makes a difference. Texas Tech has the best run defense in the country, right? It's not just the Big 12, it's the country. So I don't know what they do. If they can't run the football, it's going to a lot of pressure on that young kid.
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, LJ he's healthy, and he has looked really, really good as of late, and I think that does. The question I asked was, if you only get like 100 to 110 yards on the ground for BYU, can you win that game? And I think the answer is no.
I agree with you. And, you know, the weird thing about Tech's offense, and BYU's defense deserves a lot of credit for their red zone defense game one. Tech's offense in the red zone, last I checked, was like 94th in the country. And Baron Morton isn't a guy who scares you. But for all the BYU talk after that game about how much they left on the field, I think Tech would feel the same way with how much they left on the field. So, you know, digging in this morning, listening to a lot of different pods. Have you heard anybody outside of people that get a paycheck from BYU who have picked BYU to win this game tomorrow?
No.
Neither have I. Not like literally not one person. And I've been like intentional to try and track it down. ESPN, The Athletic, wherever it is. You know, you hear the BYU media members that work for the school pick BYU, but, you know, take that for what it is.
I think, look, they're capable of winning the game. They are. Because LJ Martin is a huge difference maker. And Bear Bachmeier's still a freshman. Like, if he has a 250-yard passing day,
yes,
that changes this game completely.
I think that might be enough. If Bear can get 250 through the air, that might be enough. Because the other thing is, you know, game one in Lubbock, Tech fans are pretty crazy, but this is a neutral field site. 60-40 BYU fans, maybe. I mean, because of the way they travel. Like, there's going to be plenty of blue in that stadium, and game one was a true road game.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot.
Did we get a little Rocky fart again?
Yeah.
Dude, what a great dog. I love that you have him in here.
Rocky's a great dog.
Yeah.
That is not a great smell coming from that puppy. Woof. 67, by the way, is the correct answer. It's coming on the text line. 67 rushing yards first week or the first time out.
No, James, not 6'7". Don't do that, please. You're not 14. I still don't know what that means.
It doesn't mean anything. That's the beauty of it.
It means, wait, beauty of it? Are you like on board with the 6'7" thing?
No, I hate it.
Where did it start?
It started with some rapper.
A rapper just said 6'7", and everybody now, henceforth and forever, can just say 6'7". You just used it, James. What does it mean?
He doesn't know.
I
mean
don't.
Anything.
Here's what I've gathered as to the origins of 6'7". All right,
Okay.
it is a rap song,
Okay.
and NBA players were doing like social media stuff where they say they said 6'7" over and over again.
Okay.
And so it made the rounds on social media, so the kids thought it was cool, and they started making it into a phrase that means literally anything.
All right, isn't it airing of grievances on the Sean O'Connell Show?
Correct.
I have a grievance about 6'7". It's dumb. Stop saying it.
All right.
Okay, I'm
Fair
glad
enough.
I got that out there.
Fair enough.
Also, you were talking about the best drivers in America. I have a grievance about people that use the crosswalk and look at their phone and just like dilly-dally while you're waiting for them. Let's get off the phone, kids. Let's walk across the street. We live in a society. Let's just keep it moving.
traffic stop / crosswalk grievances are James Peterson's specialty.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yeah.
So can you like you're sitting there, you're waiting. They hit the light, so it's flashing. You're like, okay, we'll wait. And they're looking at their phone, taking their sweet ass time when we're all just sitting there. Get off the phone, walk across the street, then you can resume your TikTok or whatever the hell it is you're doing.
Yeah, let's
Fair
see
enough.
some hustle out there.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah.
Let's
Just
I
participate.
mean, listen, at the same time, it's a balance because at the same time, you are the right of way. Get across as safely as you possibly can.
Yes.
But also, just know that we're all waiting for you to
Yes.
get out of the crosswalk.
By
Yeah,
the way,
that's the
as
thing.
safe as you possibly can never includes while you're staring at your phone. Those two things are mutually exclusive.
Well said.
In every part of life, you can do nothing more. You can do nothing safer while you're staring at your phone than when you're not staring at your phone.
Correct. Last grievance, snow, winter, cold. I just have a grievance about the way nature works. I don't like it. Let's get back to warm weather at some point.
If only there were a place you could live that didn't have this.
I'm trying, man. We're getting there at some point.
Me and Spence someday are going to be roommates on the North Shore. It's
We
going to be
are.
like stepbrothers.
Yep. Did we just become best friends?
You want to go do karate in the garage?
I will put them on your drum set, just so you know.
What a perfect way to end the show. Oh, I would
Nothing
kill
left
you
to
for
add.
that.
And I would deserve it.
I would use my samurai sword signed by Randy Jackson. The Sean O'Connell Show done, and Spence Checketts in the driver next. ESPN 700, 92.